Chapter 1170. The Dharma-formed giant tiger leaped out of the sea, and Hanya Laozu also flew out of the giant tiger's belly. Riding on the giant tiger, they headed straight for the void that Lu Ping had sealed. At this time, Hanya Laozu did not even hesitate to damage his foundation, and pay the price of no further progress in the future. He wanted to escape from the natal gentian formation. He was afraid. However, the 12 stars were close at hand, but he could not reach the edge. Hanya Laozu was suddenly shocked. He was already in a mess, but he did not realize that he was being controlled by Lu Ping's magical power. Hanya Laozu stopped the flying Dharma form and was about to move, but he suddenly felt that his whole body was stagnant. Not only could his body no longer move, but the real essence in his body was also sealed in an instant. A white light from the White Lotus formation illuminated the entire Gentian formation, and the Dharma form of the dragon had blocked in front of him. Hanya Laozu shouted, and a blood arrow suddenly shot out from his chest. A snow-white handkerchief unfolded from the blood arrow, and a dazzling light suddenly suppressed the waves of spiritual qi in the formation. Even the Dharma form of the dragon in front of him was shocked by the terrifying aura emitted from the handkerchief and did not dare to move forward. However, it was only a shock. This handkerchief might have something that frightened the Dharma form of the dragon, but obviously, Hanya Laozu could not activate it. Otherwise, he would not have used this treasure when he was beaten so badly by Lu Ping. The heaven-opening relic. Lu Ping's first reaction was that this snow-white handkerchief wrapped by Hanya Laozu's blood must be the heaven-opening relic that caused the cultivation world to be in an uproar. However, at this time, Lu Ping had finally trapped Hanya Laozu, and it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Lu Ping could not care less about the heaven-opening relic. Hanya Laozu used this hidden handkerchief in his body to shock the fatal attack of Lu Ping's Dharma form of the dragon in one fell swoop. However, Lu Ping's methods were never unique. Just as Hanya Laozu took the opportunity to shake the real essence in his body, trying to break free from the white light, he suddenly felt a chill in his back. Hanya Laozu's heart suddenly sank to the bottom. When he looked down, the invisible flying sword that had been hit by the ice tiger Dharma form had unexpectedly sneaked back to Hanya Laozu's side. At this time, this attack was aimed at Hanya Laozu's vital point. The white light collapsed, and Hanya Laozu roared and finally broke free. However, his heart was pierced, and the core space collapsed instantly. This was a fatal injury. Patriarch Frigid Leaf was on the brink of death, and yet he still had a way to fight back. The collapse of his core space would usually kill his Dharma idol along with it. But right now, the tiger Dharma idol was right beneath him. The tiger let out a roar, as if it knew that death was inevitable. It began to swell up like a balloon, and in the blink of an eye, it was about to burst out of the spell formation. Hanya Laozu was going to self-destruct, and he was going to perish together with his opponent. However, Lu Ping had painstakingly obtained this opportunity to kill his opponent. How could he let it go to waste just like that? Lu Ping suddenly patted his chest, and a wine cauldron rose up. Linglong's wine cauldron, another spiritual treasure. Lu Ping suddenly patted the body of the wine cauldron, and this time, Linglong jumped out of the wine cauldron and floated in the air. Then the whole giant cauldron began to spin rapidly under Linglong's body, and it spun faster and faster. A huge spiritual vortex suddenly communicated with the expanding ice tiger Dharma form, and it sucked back into the wine cauldron. Qiankun wine cauldron, you actually have a replica of the heaven-opening artifact! Hanya Laozu roared in despair and anger, but at this time, all that was left was a little of Hanya Laozu's spiritual will. His physical body had collapsed, and his death was inevitable. It was difficult for him to control the Dharma form at this time. The huge tiger Dharma form seemed sluggish and clumsy. After the wine cauldron continued to absorb spiritual energy, it did not know how to resist, and its huge body suddenly began to shrink. Explode! 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 Hanya Laozu, who had gone completely crazy, roared with the last of his strength in an attempt to detonate the entire ice tiger Dharma form. However, his voice was getting lower and lower, and gradually, it was almost inaudible, but the crazy obsession before death became stronger and stronger. At this time, the dragon Dharma form suddenly suspended the pure yang pearl in midair, and it was as if a huge sun was hanging in the gentian space. The giant tiger Dharma idol was, after all, a great cultivator who had survived 2 lightning tribulations. The pure yang energy contained in the Dharma idol was no weaker than that of the dragon Dharma idol. At that moment, strands of pure yang energy were being stripped from the Dharma idol's body and gathered in the pure yang pearl that was suspended in midair. Boom! In the end, the ice tiger Dharma form exploded, but after being weakened by the Linglong wine cauldron and the pure yang pearl, the power of the explosion had been greatly reduced. However, this was, after all, a great cultivator who was risking his life. The exploding ice tiger Dharma form wreaked havoc in the space of the gentian formation. The hanging cloud sail firmly protected Lu Ping's body, and the moment the dragon Dharma form exploded, it had already rushed into Lu Ping's core space with the pure yang pearl in its mouth. And before it returned to the core space, the dragon Dharma form's long tail curled up, and took the snow-white handkerchief with it into the core space. The lotus formation and the 12 gentian pearls echoed from afar, trying their best to suppress the damage caused by the explosion. However, in the process of the gentian pearls flickering, the gentian formation could no longer maintain the integrity of the formation. The 12 gentian pearls were shaken away, and the white lotus formation dimmed for a while, bursting in all directions. The natal gentian formation was broken in the end. Just before the gentian formation was broken, Lu Ping reacted quickly and grabbed the 2 purple jade bracelets that flew out from the Dharma form. These 2 spiritual treasures were really good items. Of course, the better one was the jade ring. At the same time, the jade ring that was originally inlaid on the forehead of the ice tiger was also broken into several pieces and flew out. Lu Ping did not hesitate to leave the protection of the white lotus formation and rushed into the center of the explosion with the cloud sail. He snatched the broken pieces of purple jade ice essence from the jade ring. Although the Grade 2 spiritual treasure jade ring had been completely destroyed and the spirit in it had also been annihilated, the purple jade ice essence itself was a first-class spiritual material in the cultivation world. Lu Ping was unwilling to let it be destroyed in the explosion. Unfortunately, the storage magical device on Hanya Laozu was destroyed by the power of the explosion before he could get it. Most of the things inside were destroyed along with the collapse of the storage magical device. A few lucky ones that were not destroyed were also shaken away by the power of the explosion. Lu Ping flew back quickly, but in the end, he was still affected by the explosion. He could no longer suppress the boiling blood in his body. A mouthful of hot blood splashed out from his mouth. In less than a foot, it turned into blood-red ice crystals and fell to the ground. The shockwaves from the self-detonation spread out in all directions, causing the temperature within a radius of several hundred meters to plummet. The ground that had already been ravaged by Patriarch Frigid Leaf's 1,000-kilometer icebound divine ability was now covered with a layer of frost. Lu Ping coughed loudly and tried to collect the things that were shaken away. However, there were only a few dozen of them. He roughly looked at them, and the quality was also uneven. It could be said that Hanya Laozu had planned to break out of the Northern Alliance for a long time. God knew how much of the treasures that the Northern Alliance had accumulated for thousands of years had been collected before he left. Even though he did not bring all of them with him because the treasure ship was suddenly destroyed, he was probably much richer than people like Nanyu Laozu. It was a pity that this explosion had destroyed countless treasures. Lu Ping did not even care about his own injuries. You really killed that Hanya? Lu Ping had actually already noticed the Longhua ancestor in the distance. At this time, hearing his slightly surprised question, Lu Ping could not help but ask, "Why? Does Senior think that I am no match for that Hanya?" The Longhua ancestor actually nodded and said, "Indeed. Although your strength is not bad, the old man does not think that you have the strength to kill a late Dharma adept. Especially that Hanya is not considered weak among the late Dharma adepts. I originally thought that you would at most be evenly matched with him, or even at a disadvantage. In fact, The old man had already prepared to attack at any time, but I really did not expect you to really have such strength. This was not false. During the time when Lu Ping and Hanya Laozu were fighting, Lu Ping did indeed notice that the Longhua ancestor was watching his own life gentian space. The aura around him was indeed as if he was ready to attack at any time. Lu Ping smiled bitterly and said, "In fact, this battle of mine was really dangerous. Victory or defeat was decided in a split second, and it was obvious that my luck was not bad." The Longhua ancestor nodded and said, "Your formation is really impressive." Lu Ping smiled and did not say anything else. The Longhua ancestor's eyes were like torches. Lu Ping had revealed too many of his trump cards in this battle, and he did not know how much he had already noticed. Lu Ping casually released the Bao and said, "Many treasures have been lost. How much you find will depend on your ability." De Bao had seen the Longhua ancestor before. Naturally, he knew that the person in front of him was an existence that should not be provoked. He hurriedly bowed to the Longhua ancestor and hurriedly ran towards the forest. He had indeed discovered the aura of many treasures. Lu Ping thought for a moment and also summoned Lu Xiaoping. He ordered him to chase after De Bao and protect him. Although the battle between Lu Ping and Hanya Laozu was covered by the life gentian formation, Hanya Laozu's self-explosion caused a great commotion. Although this place was remote, it was inevitable that it would attract the attention of cultivators, so it was better to be cautious. When the Longhua ancestor saw Lu Xiaoping, he naturally knew that it was refined from the 8,000-year-old willow tree that he had gifted to Lu Ping. He smiled and said, "This child is not bad, and the person who refined it is also quite talented." Lu Ping smiled and said, "It was refined by one of my junior brothers. He is quite talented in the Tao of puppets. After receiving the inheritance of Senior's avatar, he became even more like a fish in water. Junior has to thank Senior on behalf of my junior brother." As Lu Ping said this, he took out a snow-white silk handkerchief from his clothes and said, "Junior obtained this from Hanya Laozu. I wonder if this is the item that Senior left behind in the past?" The Longhua ancestor glanced at it and said indifferently, "Yes, it is. Just keep it. This item may be precious, but it is of no use to the old man. Just don't let it fall into the hands of the 6 holy lands." Chapter 1171. Previously, the Longhua ancestor had already expressed that he would not take back this relic. He just did not want it to fall into the hands of the 6 holy lands. Lu Ping did not act pretentiously. After thanking him, he put the silk handkerchief back into his lapel. In fact, he kept it in the core space. Previously, when the dragon avatar avoided Hanya Laozu's self-destruction, it did not forget to bring this silk handkerchief into the core space. Lu Ping already knew that this silk handkerchief would be of great benefit to him. This time, he took it out of caution. After all, this item originally belonged to the Longhua ancestor. Although the Longhua ancestor had said that he did not want this item, if Lu Ping kept this treasure without saying anything, it would be somewhat unreasonable. After just a cup of tea's time, the Longhua ancestor's expression changed. "I'm afraid that someone will come soon. The old man will go first. Don't be greedy for small gains. You should also leave quickly." Lu Ping nodded and suddenly stamped his foot. A faint wave spread out from the ground. Only then did Lu Ping raise his head and ask, "Senior, are you going back to the East China Sea?" The Longhua ancestor shook his head. "The old man has been trapped in the secret parish land for tens of thousands of years. This time, it was not easy to get out of the fence. Naturally, I want to travel the world and experience the atmosphere of the cultivation world." Lu Ping smiled. "Then I hope that Senior can return to the cultivation world with joy. At the same time, I also hope that Senior can get out of the fence as soon as possible." The Longhua ancestor smiled and said, "No matter what, the old man cannot break through the myriad poison heavenly wall. He can only rely on external forces. Don't forget what you promised the old man. If one day you have the ability to break through the myriad poison heavenly wall, you must help the old man." Lu Ping said solemnly, "I dare not forget." While they were talking, they heard Debao running over in the distance. Lu Xiaohai, who was sitting on his shoulder, grabbed Debao's ear tightly. As Debao ran, Lu Xiaohai giggled, which surprised Longhuai ancestor. Debao shouted, "Boss, why did you call me? Although there are not many treasures scattered in this forest, their quality is not bad. I have only collected a small part of them." Lu Ping smiled and said, "Forget it. Let's not look for the rest. Someone is already coming. We should leave first." Debao was very disappointed. He was reluctant, but he also knew that the people coming would definitely be the cultivators of the Holy Land. He was afraid that there would be some great cultivators among them. If they were caught, not to mention the collected treasures, even their lives would be in danger. The Longhuai ancestor said, "There are treasures in the handkerchief. There are some magical powers hidden in it. If you want to understand it, it depends on whether you have the ability to understand it." Just now, the old man noticed that although this thing has been abandoned for thousands of years, it is probably because of its identity as a heaven-opening relic. It has not been comprehended by anyone. The things inside are still intact. The Longhuai ancestor paused. He seemed to want to continue, so he said fiercely, "What a waste!" Lu Ping couldn't guess the meaning of the Longhuai ancestor, so he could only remain silent. The Longhuai ancestor said, "The old man has left several heaven-opening relics or other inheritances outside in the past tens of thousands of years. It was for the sake of someone finding a way to break the sky wall of myriad poisons in the future, allowing the old man to escape from the shackles. Unfortunately, no one has been able to do it. The Longhuai ancestor might be a giant locust tree, but it was trapped in the sky wall of myriad poisons for tens of thousands of years." Lu Ping could naturally imagine the loneliness. If it was really because of this, the Longhuai ancestor's mood could be understood by Lu Ping. But when he thought of the possible hidden connection between the Longhuai ancestor and Jiao Daoren, even Lu Ping didn't dare to look too deeply into the reason. Seeing that the Longhuai ancestor was about to leave, Lu Ping suddenly thought of something and asked, "Does Senior know Xiao Baiyu?" Ancestor Longhuai's identity came to an abrupt halt, and then he turned around and said with a smile, "I know what you want to ask. Since I entered the cultivation world this time, I've heard many shocking legends about this person. Moreover, I've witnessed his divine might in the past, and he can really be considered to be an extraordinary genius. However, this person isn't related to me at all. Moreover, if you attain the pure Yang realm in the future, then your strength might not necessarily be inferior to him." The Longhuai ancestor stretched out his hand and beckoned. 15 of the 16 giant trees jumped out of them. Avatars that were about the same size as Lu Xiaoping jumped out. After these avatars came out, they pounced on the Longhuai ancestor and disappeared. After these 15 avatars appeared from the giant trees, the originally silent giant tree cage suddenly exploded with a deafening roar. Longhuai waved his hand at Lu Ping, and then he vanished. Lu Ping's divine sense was outstanding, but he could only vaguely sense that the Longhuai ancestor seemed to be using the boundless forest to cast a magic power similar to the wood escape technique. However, this magic power was far superior to the wood escape technique. Lu Ping glanced at the giant tree cage. He could see that the Longhuai ancestor had actually drawn all the spiritual energy veins in the vicinity to this place. Moreover, the giant tree's formation was also very mysterious. Although the 15 avatars were no longer used as Dao soldiers, it would not be easy for the 11 heirs to break out of the giant tree cage in a short time. In the past, Jiao Daoren was famous throughout the entire cultivation world for his expertise in formations. He was even called the ancestor of formations by the cultivation world. Lu Ping thought to himself. After the Longhuai ancestor left, Lu Ping also cast a magic power and turned into a stream of water that merged with the clouds in the sky. He then disappeared. After about the time it took for an incense stick to burn, 2 streams of light from the east and west of the sky arrived first. The 2 streams of light dispersed, and a great Dharma adept walked out from each of them. They were the great adepts from the Lingyun Valley and the Skyward Pavilion who were closest to this place. When the two great adepts saw the giant tree cage and heard that the heirs who were trapped within it were attacking the formation, the two of them actually did not make a move to rescue them. Instead, they walked towards the other side of the battlefield. This was naturally the place where Lu Ping and Hanya Laozu had fought previously. After Hanya Laozu's 1,000 miles of ice, supreme magic power, and his final self-destruction, this place had long been a mess. It's Hanya's 1,000 miles of ice. Looks like he's done for. Hanya Laozu had obviously fought with someone here, but the 11 heirs from the 5 holy lands were still trapped in the formation. This could only mean that Hanya Laozu had been defeated, captured, or killed. Otherwise, he would not have allowed these heirs to be trapped here. Following closely behind, the people from the 9 Xian Tower also arrived. They were also great adepts. When they saw that the two did not make a move to rescue their juniors, they naturally understood what the two were thinking. However, they also walked around the place where Hanya Laozu had fought. When they returned, they said, "What do the two of you think?" Without waiting for the two from the Lingyun Valley and the Skyward Pavilion to answer, the great adepts from the Wuxing School and the Xiang Palace also arrived. Putting aside the other 4 Laozus, when the great adepts from the Wuxing School arrived, their faces were full of anger. Soon, everyone knew the reason: Hanya had died. This news also shocked the other 4 great adepts. Now that Hanya Laozu was obviously a member of the Wuxing School, which force would be bold enough to attack Hanya? These people had never thought that Hanya Laozu had died in the hands of one person. Usually, to kill a great adept with a solid foundation like Hanya Laozu, at least 3 adepts of the same level were needed. Even if they had set up an ambush, it would not be easy for adepts of the same level to kill Hanya Laozu. At least, the 5 great adepts from the Holy Lands who were present did not have much confidence in doing so. So, the heaven-opening relic is also lost? The great adepts from the Wuxing School looked gloomy, but he still nodded and said, "It is very likely lost. Our Wuxing School will definitely take revenge for this, and we will definitely get the heaven-opening relic back. By the way, can the heaven-opening relic really make up for the defect of the water-breaking branch?" The great adepts from the Wuxing School hesitated for a moment, but he still nodded and said, "Indeed, Junior Brother Hanya found that the handkerchief contained the essence of the water-breaking branch, which could be used to replace the 2 halves of the spirit treasure. Moreover, there was also Jiao Doran's handwriting on the handkerchief, which seemed to contain something. Unfortunately, Junior Brother Hanya could not extract the essence of the water-breaking branch from it, nor could he learn anything from Jiao Doran's handwriting. However, when he thought about what happened to Xiao Baiyu, he wanted to bring it back to the sect, so..." At the mention of Xiao Baiyu, it was the great adepts from the Xiang Palace's turn to look unhappy. He snorted heavily and said, "This time, we went for wool and came home shorn." The 5 great adepts were silent. Originally, the 5 holy lands wanted to use the heaven-opening relic to surround and kill Xiao Baiyu, but unexpectedly, their plan to surround and kill Xiao Baiyu on the Qingning River failed. The Wuxing School lost the great adepts, and the heaven-opening relic also disappeared. Later, the heirs of each sect who participated in this mission originally had the chance to learn the handwriting of Jiao Daoran, but now they did not have the chance. With a whistling sound of swords, the cage of the giant tree was broken. The sky was filled with sword lights like stars, and even the light of the day could not dim them. Su Jin and Guo Wanqing were the first to break through the giant tree's formation, and they killed their way out. The 6 supreme sword techniques of the Xiang Palace: Starry Sky Sword Technique, Chaotic Star Sword Technique. Sword cultivators were indeed the existence with the most tyrannical attacks. Su Jin and Guo Wanqing cooperated with each other, and the power of the 2 supreme sword techniques was even stronger. They were the first to break through the giant tree fence. However, after the 2 of them rushed out, they were on guard, as if they were ready to attack at any time. But soon, the 2 of them were stunned. The 5 great adepts, including their seniors from the Xiang Palace, were looking at the 2 of them coldly. Their eyes were filled with great dissatisfaction. What was going on? Before the 2 of them could figure out the reason, another long whistle was heard. Wishing School's Mu Changxing had finally broken through the giant tree's cage with the help of his deep attainments in the wood attribute cultivation method. Senior brothers from the Xiang Palace, the person who set up this formation is far stronger than us. Let us practice first. Disciple greets the 5 Laozu. Chapter 1172. After leaving the forest, Lu Ping took a big detour from afar before heading towards the Qingning River where the Northern Alliance's treasured ship had anchored earlier. By the time Lu Ping returned, the battle had already ended. The Northern Alliance's treasured ship on the Qingming River had already disappeared without a trace. Laozu, the pure yang in the sky, had also disappeared without a trace. Mara's army and the Dharma adepts of the various sects had also disappeared without a trace. Because of the flow of the river, there were no longer any traces of the previous battle on the surface of the river. Only the fallen trees on both sides of the river could prove that there had indeed been a huge battle that shocked the entire world of practitioners. Lu Ping went around the Qingming River and came to the small hill where he had previously hidden. 2 figures also appeared from the void. It was Tian Tian and Lu Tianyuan, the 2 Jinling Dharma adepts. Between the 2 of them, Lu Ping's expression could not help but change. Tian Tian said, "Are you injured?" They had a rough idea of Lu Ping's strength. Among the adepts of the same level, unless they were surrounded and attacked by multiple people, it would not be easy to injure Lu Ping. Lu Ping smiled and said, "It's no big deal. It's just a normal injury. I'll recover in about 1 or 2 months." Lu Ping saw that although the 2 of them were not injured, they looked slightly tired. It was obvious that the previous battle on the Qingming River had not been easy. However, the 2 of them had a look of excitement in their eyes. It was obvious that the 2 of them had already snatched the treasured ship during the battle with Mara's army and had gained something from it. Lu Ping smiled and asked, "It seems that the 2 of you have gained a lot from the treasured ship?" Lu Tianyuan smiled and said, "It was a worthwhile trip. This time, besides the Northern Alliance adepts, the rest of the army that attacked Mara's army were mostly adepts from various sections. They obviously valued the treasures that the Northern Alliance adepts had hidden on the treasured ship and did not care about the ship itself. This actually allowed the 2 of us to take advantage of it. I snatched 2 masts, and Senior Tian Tian found 2.5 sails." Lu Ping's eyes lit up and he said, These Dharma adepts of the Central Plains are really blind. How can the masts and sails on the treasured ship be made up of ordinary treasures? All of them are natural treasures. The 2 of you have gained a lot. Just the masts and sails alone made this trip worthwhile. Our sect's treasured ship will definitely be repaired much faster." Tian Tian was still a little dispirited and said, "It's a pity that there are still some people who know what's good. After we snatched the masts and sails, it was obvious that the overseas adepts also joined in. Everything on the treasured ship and even the ship itself began to be snatched. Some even attacked everything on the ship. Anything that could be smashed down was collected. We no longer have a chance." Lu Ping smiled and said, "This is already considered not bad. If the 2 of you had snatched too much, I'm afraid you would have become a thorn in the other party's side. At that time, the consequences would only be more serious." "That's true." The 2 of them could not help but laugh. Lu Ping thought of something and pointed to the sky. He said, "What was the result of the battle between the pure Yang Laozu?" The 2 of them could not help but reveal a strange and shocked expression. In the end, it was Lu Tianyuan who said, "After junior brother left, another pure Yang Laozu attacked." This time, even Lu Ping was shocked. He said, 9 pure Yang Laozu? Since when did the pure Yang Laozu become so worthless in the world of cultivation? Lu Tianyuan said. The last Laozu that attacked seemed to be extremely excited. He had not even entered the cloudy space, but with just 1 strike, he broke up the battle of the pure Yang Laozu. After that, the Laozu dispersed. Dispersed? Just 1 strike and it was scattered? Tian Tian then explained. That strike did indeed disperse everyone, but then these Laozu left separately in different directions. Only the pure Yang Laozi that came later seemed to be chasing after Xiao Baiyu's escaped light towards the east. Lu Ping really could not figure out the mystery. Could it be that the person who came later was an existence that was higher than everyone else? Could it be that he was able to shock the 8 pure Yang Laozi in one fell swoop? Then what was the existence that was higher than the pure Yang Laozi? Even Lu Ping didn't dare to think about it any further. If he had been there at that time, he might have been able to use the 3 pure eyes to see something. Unfortunately, he was not there at that time, so naturally he did not know the situation at that time. However, after the pure Yang Laozi left, it was obvious that they realized that no one could do anything to the other. The 5 holy lands could not kill Xiao Baiyu, so this plan naturally fell through. Xiao Baiyu could not pass the 5 pure Yang Laozi, so naturally, they could not obtain the treasure of opening the heavens. Naturally, they would not make any more useless efforts. Lu Ping did not dwell on this, so he asked, "What about the Mara army and the treasure ship?" Tian Tian said, "In today's battle, there were dozens of Dharma adepts gathered on the Qingning River. When they attacked together, Mara's army was completely destroyed, and the treasure ship was robbed until only an empty shell was left. After that, it was taken away by the people of the Skyward Pavilion. The rest of the practitioners naturally would not provoke the Skyward Pavilion." Lu Ping said curiously, "The Lingyun Valley should be the closest to here. Why did they let the people of the Skyward Pavilion take away the treasure ship?" Lu Tianyuan said, "The Lingyun Valley must be having a headache now. Magic Cloud City was attacked by the Mara army, and less than 10% of the practitioners in Magic Cloud City survived. After that, Peacock Royalty took the opportunity to lead the Endless Mountain Demon Clan to expel the Mara army in Magic Cloud City and occupy it. Now, the Endless Mountain Demon Clan may even want to build the Magic Cloud City there. How can the Lingyun Valley take care of it? Magic Cloud City could be regarded as a subsidiary force of the Lingyun Valley, and it was also a very important stronghold. It was a key link in the cooperation between the Lingyun Valley and the Skyward Pavilion to prevent the Endless Mountain Demon Clan from penetrating into the central mainland. Now, Peacock Royalty had seized the opportunity to occupy Magic Cloud City, and the reason why Peacock Royalty had given them was so reasonable. After all, Mara had been expelled from Magic Cloud City. Unless the Lingyun Valley and the Skyward Pavilion wanted to forcibly start a war with the Endless Mountain Demon Clan, they would never give up Magic Cloud City. Lu Ping looked at the 2 senior martial brothers and asked, "Senior martial brothers, what do you plan to do next?" Lu Tianyuan said, "We have to go back to the sky-filling courtyard first and inform the sect of what happened here. We also have to return the masts and sails of these treasure ships to the sect." Tian Tian said, "After that, we have to travel to the cultivation world of the central mainland again. The central mainland is vast, and the knowledge gained from this trip to the Green Netherworld River is far greater than that of being confined in the North Sea." Lu Tianyuan said, "Junior martial brother, aren't you going back to the North Sea?" Lu Ping shook his head and said, "I still have a remarkable power to learn, and it's a critical moment now. I still have to drift on the Green Netherworld River for a while." Both of them had looks of envy on their faces. When the 2 of them had advanced to the Dharma stage, they had each learned a great special power. Such an achievement was already considered outstanding among the Dharma adepts of Jinling. However, they also knew how difficult the process of learning a great special power was, and how strong a practitioner's foundation was. However, this junior martial brother in front of them had trained far less than the 2 of them, but he had at least cultivated several great special powers, and he had even succeeded in condensing a supreme power. Now that he had advanced to the mid-Dharma stage, it was unknown how many more special powers he would have. Lu Ping did not know what the 2 of them were thinking, but he remembered something. He stretched out his hand and opened up the space in the House of Gold. Deng Ming walked out from inside, a little confused. Seeing Deng Ming, Lu Tianyuan and Tian Tian were also stunned. Lu Ping then said, "This is Junior Martial Brother Deng Ming, an array master that I met when I was traveling in the South Sea." Now that I've asked Junior Marshal Brother Deng Ming to join our sect, and he has already inherited our sect's array techniques. Now that the two of you are returning to the sect, you can bring Junior Marshal Brother Deng along as well." With that, he introduced Lu Tianyuan and Tian Tian to Deng Ming. When Lu Tianyuan and Tian Tian heard that Deng Ming was actually an array master, they saw a hint of joy in each other's eyes. The two of them also understood what Lu Ping meant. It was obvious that he wanted to tell them that Deng Ming was a trustworthy person, and that he could definitely participate in the repair of the treasured ship after returning to the sect. Right now, the repair of Zhenling's treasured ship had entered a critical stage. Because the sect had two tool refinement masters, Zhenling only had one array master, Taoist Xianqian. As a result, the repair of the array formations on the treasured ship was far behind. It was not coordinated with the repair of the ship's hull, and it had even begun to hinder the repair of the ship. Tianjiang Laozu was very anxious, but he could not say much. After all, Zhenling's current foundation was still somewhat insufficient, and Tianjiang Laozu did not have much lifespan left, so he was clearly a little anxious. Now that another trustworthy array master had joined the repair of the treasured ship, Zhenling's current predicament would naturally be easily resolved, and the repair of the treasured ship would definitely be greatly increased. Deng Ming was different from Taoist Xianqian. Perhaps Deng Ming's accumulation of knowledge in arrays was currently not as good as Taoist Xuanqian's, but Deng Ming was far younger than Taoist Xianqian. Now, he had also received the inheritance of two top array masters in the cultivation world, and he had gained new knowledge on Kongming Island. Most importantly, he even had the possibility of entering the Dharma stage in the future. Once he accumulated enough knowledge, his future achievements would far exceed Taoist Xuanqian's, and he would definitely become the new authority of Zhenling in the field of arrays. On the surface of the river that was a few miles wide, the water of the Qingming River flowed in waves. On the back of a huge black turtle, Lu Ping leisurely enjoyed the river breeze, allowing De Gui to swim in the Qingming River. However, at this time, although Lu Ping seemed to be leisurely, in reality, most of his attention had already been focused on the core space. To be more specific, he was focused on the snow-white handkerchief that floated above the white lotus in the core space, with the Dharma power of the dragon revolving around it. The quality of this handkerchief alone was probably many times better than the sails of the treasured ships that Tian Tian had snatched earlier. And on the lower right corner of the handkerchief, there was a colorful phoenix that was 3 inches long, looking very lively, flapping its wings as if it was about to take flight. Could it be that this handkerchief belongs to Luan Taoist? Lu Ping was suspicious, but he could not find anything on the handkerchief with his divine sense. Then where was Jiao Doran's handwritten letter? The purple-gold eyes of the dragon Dharma power of the dragon suddenly turned blood red, and a sense of sorrow, murderousness, and heroism came rushing at him. Lu Ping, who was lying on the back of the black turtle, was shocked. Chapter 1173. The battle at Qingming River shocked the world. First, Magic Cloud's city was destroyed. The entire large sect had tens of thousands of practitioners, but only a few hundred of them managed to escape. After that, less than 200 practitioners of Magic Cloud City, led by Xianyun Laozu, were annexed by Lingyun Valley. After that, the 5 pure Yang practitioners of the 5 Holy Lands set up an ambush above Qingming River to kill Xiao Baiyu. Unexpectedly, Yang Shoucheng, the pure Yang practitioner of the Peacock royalty, and Laozu of Tianxian's sect came to help Xiao Baiyu. The final result was even more surprising. Xia Yaozi of Lingyun Valley was beaten up by Yang Wangdi. Under Yang Wangdi's deliberate prank, Xia Yaozi's hair was disheveled like a ghost. All the practitioners who gathered at Qingming River at that time saw it, and it immediately became a joke in the cultivation world. It was very embarrassing. If it was because Yang Wangdi had the 5 elements spiritual light fan, then it was reasonable for Xia Yaozi to be defeated. But when Mu Yi Laozu of Wuxing's school was completely suppressed by Laozu of 7 elements spiritual light fan and finally returned with injuries, everyone was shocked. Since when did the pure Yang Laozu of the 5 Holy Lands become so easy to bully? For a time, the practitioners were at a loss, and they all attributed the reason to the spirit treasures in the hands of the 2 pure Yang practitioners of Laozu. Needless to say, Yang Wandi's 5 elements spiritual light fan was a spirit treasure derived from the supreme magical power practiced by Pingdaoren in the past. The 7 spiritual fans in the hands of Laozu of 7 elements spiritual light fan, which was a replica of the 7 feathers fan of Luan Taoist, also shocked the world. Legend had it that the 7 feathers fan of Luan Taoist was made from the true spirit feathers of 7 kinds of phoenix bloodlines. It was a powerful heaven-opening artifact. At the beginning of the world, the Luan Taoists used the 7 feathers fan to control the weather of the world. It was sunny, cloudy, rainy, foggy, snowy, windy, and frosty. As long as the 7 feathers fan of Luan Taoist was waved, the world would change. The 7 feathered fans in Elder 7 fans' hands could not be combined into one. Although the feathers of the 7 spirit birds all belonged to the bloodline of the Luan, 4 of them were feathers obtained from pure Yang spirit birds, while the other 3 were even worse. They were feathers obtained from 3 different spirit birds with Dharma great adepts level of cultivation. Although the Tianxian sect had spent a lot of effort on these 7 feathers over the past thousands of years, improving their quality, they were still restricted by nature. Until now, they had only survived the second thunder trial. Even so, the battle at the Qingning River had shocked the cultivation world with the power of the 7 feathers. Although the 7 fans could not be combined, they were a set. Even the Wishing School's Muyi Laozu, who had lost to the 7 feathers fan of Laozu, had to admit afterward that even a pure Yang spirit treasure that had survived the third thunder trial was nothing more than this. However, the so-called pure Yang spirit treasure, of course, the main character of this battle was not these people, but the sky-splitting sword saint. Although Xiao Baiyu had the help of 2 pure Yang spirit treasures, he still had to fight 1 against 3. However, the final result did not disappoint the cultivation world. Wang Xianqing fought fiercely, but in the end, he was forced by the sword Qi. The second tribulation spirit treasure in his hand was knocked down a step, and he was also invaded by the sword Qi. After returning to the Xiang Palace, he went into seclusion and had not come out until now. The cultivation world guessed that this time, Wang Xianqing must have been seriously injured. Pure Yang Laozu's flying fork formation was also an unruly existence in the Nine Xian Tower. She had once publicly challenged the pure Yang Laozu of the Nine Xian Tower as a late Dharma practitioner. Although she had lost miserably, she was someone that no one in the Nine Xian Tower dared to provoke. This time, when she advanced to the pure Yang level, she originally wanted to use Xiao Baiyu to show off. Who would have thought that Xiao Baiyu would break the flying fork formation with one sword strike? This caused her to be disgraced, and she had to run back to the Nine Xian Tower with her tail between her legs. Among the 3 of them, the one who suffered the least damage was Bailey Cha Tian Laozu of the Skyward Pavilion. This Laozu seemed to have some friendship with Xiao Baiyu in the past. In this battle, Bailey Changtian's space magic was also broken by Xiao Baiyu, but in the end, he was able to escape unscathed and did not suffer any serious injuries. It must be known that in the beginning, Xiao Baiyu was besieged by 5 people. After the 2 pure Yang Laozu rushed over to help, Xiao Baiyu had in fact already been injured under the siege of 5 pure Yang adepts. But even so, he still managed to return victorious after fighting 1 against 3. In fact, this sky-splitting sword sage even had the time to destroy the treasured ship of the Northern Alliance with 1 sword strike. In the end, the 5 Holy Lands went for wool and came home shorn. Just as the pure Yang Laozu of the 5 Holy Lands conspired to kill Xiao Baiyu, a huge battle broke out on the 3 sky-splitting islands of the East Sea, and Skyrend almost became history. The Crystal Palace gathered 4 great adepts, 9 mid-Dharma Laozu, and a number of early Dharma adepts. Under the leadership of the pure Yang adept Yuanlei Laozu, they took the opportunity to attack the 3 sky-splitting islands. Skyrend fought back. Skyrend was one of the 2 remaining great adepts. Over the years, with the power of Xiao Baiyu, apart from Xiao Baiyu, pure yang Laozu, Skyrend originally had 3 great adepts, 6 mid-Dharma adepts, and 11 or 12 Dharma adepts. This time, it had suddenly lost a third of them. Although on the surface, it seemed that the Crystal Palace had suffered a greater loss, but the Crystal Palace had dominated overseas for tens of thousands of years. As the only major sect overseas, there had long been rumors in the world of practitioners that the Crystal Palace was the real #1 holy land in the world of practitioners. 10 Dharma adepts, including 1 great adept, had fallen. Although the loss was huge, it was far less serious than the loss of Skyrend. However, the most surprising thing was the attitude of the Green Sea Snake. In this internal strife among the human practitioners, the Green Sea Snake had actually chosen to stand on the side of Xiao Baiyu. Thinking back to the previous battle at the Qingming River, the peacock race in the Endless Mountains seemed to have also stood on the side of Xiao Baiyu. Although Yang Shouchang, the royal brother, was famous for being unreliable in the world of practitioners, Yan Wendi's identity made it so that no one dared to underestimate the attitude of the peacock royalty. The world of practitioners was a treacherous place. Apart from these famous sects, tribes, and clans, no one could see the current situation in the world of practitioners. However, at this time, another piece of news came from the world of practitioners. The great spiritual apes of the North Ice Plains, who had rarely appeared in the world of practitioners, suddenly appeared everywhere in the world of practitioners. Immediately after the peacock royalty, Yan Wendi was once incited by someone to make a slip of the tongue when he was messing around in the Central Plains. He said that during the battle at the Qingming River, the last pure young adept who entered the battlefield was actually the former general of the great spiritual apes, Yuan Pokong. That guy is a man, even crazier than Xiao Baiyu. He doesn't like to fight one-on-one, but he loves to fight in groups. Whenever he sees a group fight, he'll rush up and start a fight. After he messed things up like that, everyone else became his enemy. If it was a one-on-one fight, I naturally wouldn't be afraid, but who would be able to take a beating from him? You all saw it for yourselves, it wasn't just me, everyone else scattered. I heard that after Senior Laozu defeated the Unfettered One and everyone dispersed, that Yuan Pokong chased after Xiao Baiyu and Laozu. Senior, do you know why? Could it be that this Senior Yuan Pokong is also here to help Xiao Laozu? As he poured wine for Yang Wendi, he asked about the minor repairs of an ordinary tavern in the Central Plains. Yang Wendi looked at minor repairs from the corner of his eyes and said, "Brat, you've got some guts. You dared to trick me?" That gaze scared the minor repairs out of his wits, but Yang Wendi chuckled and said, "Then I'll tell you." Minor repairs cursed in his heart. "You're a pure young great cultivator. Do you feel any sense of accomplishment scaring a waiter like me? Actually, Yuan Pokong suffered a loss at Man Zhao's hands all those years ago." "Oh, then this Yuan Pokong Laozu went to take revenge? Then, Laozu, did you also lose to Xiao Laozu back then?" "How could I possibly lose?" Yang Wendi immediately jumped up like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, and said, "He was the one who lost to me, okay? Is that okay?" The waiter hurriedly nodded and said, Good. How could Xiao Laozu be your opponent? A 5-element spiritual light fan is enough to send him back to the East Sea." Yang Wendi immediately beamed with joy, and his expression was full of praise. He then took out a stone and gave it to Minor Repairs. Minor Repairs hurriedly thanked him, and when he raised his head, Yang Wendi had already disappeared. Only then did he realize that the stone in his hand was actually a top-grade spirit stone. The next day, the tavern was burned into ruins. The culprit was unknown, but Yang Wendi's words in the tavern had spread. Chapter 1174. Although Yang Shouchang had finally confirmed that the wise Great Ape clan had entered the cultivation world of the Central Plains, the cultivation world had never forgotten about the fuse of all these events, the heaven-opening relic in Hanya Laozu's possession. Regardless of whether it was the 6 sacred lands or the demon clan, none of them said a word about this matter. However, as time passed, news gradually spread. Hanya Laozu had never appeared in Wishing School. Hundreds of miles north of the Qingming River, a great battle had broken out in the forest. After the battle, some cultivators had seen cultivators from the 5 holy lands in the vicinity, including the 11 cultivators who had rushed out of the Northern Alliance's treasure ship. As a result, the cultivation circle was once again filled with various rumors and speculations. Some said that Han Yu was dead and the heaven-opening relic had fallen into the hands of others. Some said that the 5 holy lands killed him afterwards. Some said that the heaven-opening relic did not exist and was just used to lure Xiao Baiyu, and so on. However, at this moment, the murderer of Hanya Laozu and the ultimate owner of the Northern Alliance's heaven-opening relic were resting on the back of a black tortoise on the Qingming River. On the other hand, although Lu Ping looked relaxed, his entire mind was focused on the handkerchief woven from the frost silk in his heart core. The eyes of the Dharma form of the dragon flickered with a green and red light. Characters began to appear on the snow-white silk handkerchief. The battle of the ice plains concerns the Khanate. For you, I will kill my way through this world. Only death awaits me. Determination, sorrow, heroism, sternness, killing intent, sword intent, affection, all the artistic conception came from these words. For a moment, Lu Ping was deeply immersed in the artistic conception expressed by these words. The Dharma form of the dragon shook its head and wagged its tail. The pearl of pure yang in its abdomen shone brightly. Lu Ping's divine sense finally sensed that something was wrong. The jade phosphorus soul fire blazed and began to struggle to break free from the binding of this artistic conception. Fortunately, Lu Ping's divine sense was outstanding, and he had the help of the jade phosphorus soul flame. So, he quickly broke free from the complex concepts expressed in these 20 words. However, Lu Ping still couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. It was just a few words, but they gave Lu Ping such a horrifying feeling. The heaven-splitting ancestors were truly people who could only be looked up to. Lu Ping, who had just woken up, didn't have the time to ponder over the artistic conception that Jiao Daoren had expressed in the 20 words at that time. Instead, he began to let his imagination run wild over the meaning of the 20 words. Who was Jiao Daoren going to fight in the icy plains? At the beginning of the world, besides the 7th Patriarch himself, who else could threaten the existence like Jiao Daoren? Did the threat come from outside this world? However, considering the relationship between Jiao Daoren and Ping Daoren, and the fact that Jiao Daoren failed to ask Taoist Hu to refine the sword of the immortal spirit, Lu Ping was more willing to believe that the 7th Patriarch had a dispute with him. So what was the purpose of the dispute? Perhaps the reason lay in the 4 words. It's about the congenital. But what did the congenital mean? Lu Ping was still confused. The understanding of the congenital in the cultivation world was more like inborn and gifted. But in any case, these had nothing to do with the 7 heaven-splitting ancestors, Laozu. I'll kill my way through this world for you. Only death awaits me. It was easy to understand. It seemed that Jiao Daoren was not optimistic about the upcoming battle in the icy plains and had risked his life. But it seemed that his life was not for him, but for others. Who was Jiao Daoren fighting for? Looking at the silk handkerchief and the Tsai-Luan ornament in the lower right corner of the silk handkerchief, the answer to the question seemed to be obvious. In the Battle of the Icy Plains, Jiao Daoren wanted to fight for the Luan Taoist. The purpose of the congenital was also to fight for the Luan Taoist, even at the cost of his own life. As for why Jiao Daoren wanted to fight for the Luan Taoist, it was not difficult to understand. The 7th Patriarch of the heaven-splitting ancestors had 4 men and 3 women. Among them, Taoist Hu was a tall and sturdy woman, a real tigress and extremely fierce, while Luan Taoist and Taoist Chan were both charming great beauties. With Jiao Daoren's romantic personality, it was not strange if he really fell for the Luan Taoist skirt. Even if he had to pay with his own life for this, it might not be worth it in many people's eyes, or even a child's play. But no one knew whether Jiao Daoren believed in the saying, "Even if I die under a peony flower, I'll still be a romantic even as a ghost," and intended to verify it himself. All the mysteries seemed to revolve around the congenital, but Lu Ping had no clue what the congenital, in Jiao Daoren's words, meant. Lu Ping slowly sat up on the back of the black tortoise, stretched out his arms, and then looked to the north across the sky. The northern ice plains. It was said that the Laozu who achieved the true spirit in the cultivation world would eventually disappear there, and it was also the place where the seventh patriarch of the heaven-splitting ancestors disappeared. It was said that the seventh patriarch of the heaven-splitting ancestors had opened a door to the outside world, and then disappeared from the northern ice plains. Everyone thought that the seventh patriarch had gone to a place outside of this world, and the true spirit cultivators of the cultivation world had all left the northern ice plains through the exit that the seventh patriarch had left behind. This legend was not groundless. It was spread to the world before the seventh patriarch went to the northern ice plains, and outside the passage, the seventh patriarch had set up a large formation. Those who were not Jinling cultivators were not qualified to pass through the formation. In addition to testing the qualifications of cultivators to leave this world, this great formation was also used to protect this passageway. Not only was it used to protect it from being destroyed by cultivators from this world, it was also used to protect this passageway from being invaded by things from outside this world. However, from the looks of it now, it seemed that the passageway leading to the outside world under the cover of the layers of formations in the northern ice plains hid many secrets that outsiders did not know about. Unfortunately, all those who might know about these secrets never returned after entering the formation. The formation in the northern ice plains was the final goal of all the cultivators in this world. From the moment it appeared, it was covered in a layer of holiness. However, when Lu Ping looked to the north, he could not help but feel a shadow in his heart. Just what was behind the formation? Lu Ping shook his head and no longer thought about these things. With his current cultivation, he was far from having the qualifications to think about going there. However, the handwriting written by Jiao Daoren on the silk handkerchief had been spread to the world. Regardless of whether or not someone had truly comprehended any magical abilities from the handkerchief, at the very least, the contents of the handkerchief were known by more than one person. At the very least, Hanya Laozu knew about it. Otherwise, how could it have been spread to the world by the 5 holy lands? However, the 6 holy lands had spread Jiao Daoren's handwriting to the world, but they did not spread the contents of the handkerchief. It seemed that the 6 holy lands only wanted to use the handkerchief to kill Xiao Baiyu. They did not want to give up on the handkerchief written by Jiao Daoren. Could it be that the 6 holy lands themselves wanted to cover up this news? Although Lu Ping was a little uncertain, it was not impossible. At the very least, the 6 holy lands had been established at the beginning of the world. The founder of the 6 holy lands, Laozu, had more or less been directly or indirectly related to the 7th patriarch. If one were to say who knew the most secrets of this world, it would probably be the 6 holy lands. In the core space, the dragon form once again opened its eyes wide to carefully study the handkerchief. This time, it was not looking at the contents of the handkerchief, but observing the handwriting. In the past, Xiao Baiyu had comprehended a peerless sword technique from the handkerchief written by Jiao Daoren. How could Lu Ping let go of such an opportunity? He had to give it a try after all. However, after observing for a while, even Lu Ping himself did not know how much time had passed, but he gained nothing. He could not help but feel discouraged. He thought to himself, could it be that only a pure sword practitioner like Xiao Baiyu, who has the extraordinary comprehension in the world, can comprehend something from it? Or maybe there is no peerless sword technique in these handkerchief at all? Lu Ping had no choice but to wake up from his meditative state again. He looked around and found that Xian Tortoise was following the flow of the river. He didn't know where it was now, but he noticed that the Qingming River seemed to flow a lot more smoothly. There were no longer hills and forests on both sides, but an endless plain. Lu Ping guessed that he was now in the middle of the Qingming River. On the plain, the green sea was rolling, but it was not seawater, but farmland. There were many figures in the farmland, but many mortals were working in it. Such a scene could also be seen overseas, but it was not as vast as the mainland. Besides, the number of cultivators and mortals in the overseas cultivation world was far less than that of the mainland. However, the ratio of cultivators and mortals in the overseas cultivation world was slightly higher than that of the mainland. There were also spiritual fields in the farmland from time to time because of the existence of spiritual gathering places. Therefore, low-level cultivators could often be seen flying in the sky, and the mortals on the ground had long been accustomed to it. Lu Ping's eyes were so sharp that he soon found that most of these low-level cultivators were minor repairs in the blood-refining realm. However, the flying celestial tools under their feet were mostly celestial tools. Thinking of the joy of obtaining a celestial tool when he was in the late blood-refining realm, the popularity of celestial tools among the blood-refining realm cultivators in the mainland was obviously much higher than that of the North Sea. Thinking of refining celestial tools, Lu Ping suddenly made an "oh" sound. Strictly speaking, the silk handkerchief was only made of extremely high quality, but it itself was not a celestial tool or a magic treasure. Those who obtained it would naturally not try to refine it with their true essence. At this time, an idea popped up in Lu Ping's mind for no reason. Should I try refining it with my true essence? The true essence was like a surging sea, instantly immersing the entire handkerchief in it. The colorful phoenix in the lower right corner of the silk handkerchief shone brightly, and the lifelike colorful phoenix seemed to be alive. At the same time, 3 inexplicable auras were suddenly attracted by Lu Ping's vigorous true essence, but Lu Ping's eyes became brighter and brighter. There was really something strange inside. Chapter 1175. Long Huai ancestor once said that there was a treasure hidden in the silk handkerchief. After Hanya Laozu obtained it, he wanted to bring it back to Wishing School to make up for the shortcomings of the water-broken school. However, although the two of them could sense that there was a treasure hidden in the silk handkerchief, they didn't know what the treasure was. Of course, it was also possible that Long Huai ancestor knew what was inside, but he didn't tell Lu Ping. However, when Lu Ping's real essence flowed into the silk handkerchief, he encountered a strange thing. With Lu Ping's current arcane essence, his arcane essence was already rich and pure. The North Sea Wave Listening Scripture, a mysterious cultivation method, had extremely strict requirements on the purity of his arcane essence. As a result, when he was in the core forging realm, he chose to fuse with 1 heaven low-grade arcane essence, 2 heaven mid-grade arcane essences, and 3 heaven high-grade arcane essences. This method of fusion was one of a kind in the cultivation world. Of course, Lu Ping's hard work and luck played a huge part in this, but the root cause was the North Sea Wave Listening Scripture's outstanding cultivation method. After Lu Ping fused with such wonderful heaven-level spirit objects, the water property in his real essence was really rare in the world. It could be said that if Lu Ping melted a drop of real essence into a pool of spiritual water, then depending on the amount of spiritual water and the degree of the real essence, the spiritual property in the spiritual water would be comparable to any heaven-level spirit object, ranging from heaven-level low-grade to heaven-level high-grade. Of course, real essence water could not be used as heaven-level spirit water unless it was absolutely necessary. This was because real essence water was usually the fusion of several heaven-level spirit objects, and there was no longer a pure spiritual property in it. However, just as Lu Ping inserted his real essence into the silk handkerchief, he suddenly found a spiritual property that was far more spiritual than Lu Ping's real essence. This kind of spiritual property was not as pure as heaven-level spirit objects. On the contrary, it was like the refined real essence of spirit objects. It was a kind of man-made object. However, Lu Ping soon found that there was more than one spiritual property hidden in the silk handkerchief. He soon found a second one, and then a third one. When Lu Ping's real essence had soaked the whole silk handkerchief, he finally confirmed that there were only 3 spiritual property in the silk handkerchief. What was this? Lu Ping summoned Linglong's wine cauldron from the side of the Dharma idol. Since the last time when he tried to stop Hanya Laozu from self-destructing, Linglong had been in a state of deep sleep. Lu Ping knew that Linglong's vitality had been injured this time. Although it was difficult to control the real essence of a great cultivator, if she could really control it, it would be an excellent opportunity to improve her own quality. However, at this time, he had to wake Linglong from her deep sleep. Linglong was extremely familiar and sensitive to all kinds of spiritual liquids in the world. Perhaps she could guess a thing or two about this kind of spiritual liquid that Lu Ping had never seen before. Linglong reluctantly put the silk handkerchief in the wine cauldron. The Dharma idol spat out a mouthful of original dragon breath, and the wine cauldron immediately began to spin. Ah! In just a moment, Linglong's scream came from the wine cauldron. The Dharma idol immediately stopped, and the wine cauldron also stopped spinning. Linglong came out of the wine cauldron and said, "Brother, the things on this silk handkerchief are very precious. I want them." The Dharma idol sat on the lotus and said, "Do you have a way to separate the three spiritual property from the silk handkerchief?" Linglong's face suddenly became bitter, and she shook her head. Lu Ping couldn't help but feel a little disappointed, but he still asked, "Do you know what these three spiritual property are?" Linglong hesitated and said, "They seem to be tears." "Tears?" Lu Ping couldn't help but be surprised, but then Lu Ping also felt that it might really be tears. Wasn't a handkerchief originally used to wipe sweat, tears, and the like? It was reasonable to say that there were tears in the silk handkerchief. However, these tears were too mysterious. The 3 drops of tears soaked in the silk handkerchief for a long time without drying up. Moreover, thinking about the spirituality contained in the silk handkerchief that even Lu Ping's own Jinyuan couldn't compare to, it seemed that the original owner of these tears was on the verge of being revealed. The tears of the Luan Taoist. As for the reason, it seemed to be easy to explain. Jiao Daoren had left a message on this silk handkerchief and even said that he would die for her, so it was only natural that the Luan Taoist would be moved to tears. As for why he was so sure that the tears in the silk handkerchief definitely belonged to the Luan Taoist, Lu Ping looked at the Kai Luan at the bottom right corner of the silk handkerchief and didn't seem to have any other guesses. Moreover, other than the Luan Taoist's identity as the 7th patriarch of opening up the sky, what other tears could exist in this silk handkerchief for such a long time without drying up? Lu Ping immediately thought of something, and his divine will descended into the house of gold, immediately forming a shadow of Lu Ping. This was also a remarkable ability that Lu Ping had mastered after advancing to the mid-Dharma stage. In other words, it was the image of divine will technique, which was actually the condensation of one's own divine will into a projection, which could be used to converse with someone who wasn't in front of him. This was originally a technique that could only be mastered after advancing to the late Dharma stage. Now that Lu Ping's level of practice had stabilized, he could also use the image of divine will technique. The projection held the silk handkerchief and called Lu Qiner over, instructing her. "Qiner, can you see if you can feel what's in the silk handkerchief?" Lu Qiner's divine will entered the handkerchief, and she could not help but frown. Then, she tried to use her inner yuan to enter the handkerchief, but the silk handkerchief had long been filled with Lu Ping's own inner yuan. There was no way that Lu Qiner could fight against Lu Ping's inner yuan. Without waiting for Lu Ping to say anything, Lu Qiner let out a cry of surprise and almost fell. Lu Ping's image of divine will was directed towards Lu Qiner, and a thick wave of inner yuan was injected into Lu Qiner's body through the air. Only then did he say, "Qiner, try again this time." Although she had the support of Lu Ping's inner yuan, Lu Qiner still carefully reached out to touch the silk handkerchief. After making sure that there was no backlash from Lu Ping's inner yuan, she then followed the guidance of Lu Ping's inner yuan and began to search for the 3 teardrops hidden in the silk handkerchief. Lu Qiner's expression suddenly became pious, and her eyelids twitched. Clearly, she was extremely excited at this time. Lu Ping softly asked, "Qiner, how is it?" As soon as he said this, Lu Qiner actually knelt down towards the silk handkerchief, and then she piously returned the silk handkerchief to Lu Ping, saying, "Big brother, this silk handkerchief contains the sacred relic of Qina's ancestor. It seems to be tears." Lu Ping's heart became even more certain, and he asked, "Does Qiner know if this is a sacred relic left behind by the ancestor of the Luan clan?" Lu Qiner shook her head and said, Qi-ner can only feel that these 3 teardrops contain a vast amount of qi from the ancestor of the Luan clan, and it will be of great help to Qi-ner's growth. As for which ancestor of the Luan clan, Qi-ner doesn't know. However, this ancestor must be very powerful, and Qi-ner can't imagine that these 3 teardrops can contain such great power. Lu Ping noticed the excitement on Lu Qi-ner's face, so he asked softly, Qi-ner, are you confident you can extract the senior's relic from the silk handkerchief? I'm sure they will be very useful to you, right? Lu Qi-ner thought for a moment, and then shook her head, saying, Qi-ner's cultivation is not high enough. Qi-ner's instincts can sense these things, and they will be of great benefit to Qi-ner in the future. However, Qi-ner is far from being able to absorb and refine them now. Lu Ping couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. Originally, he thought that even if Lu Qi-ner couldn't extract the teardrops from the silk handkerchief, if she could absorb a portion of them, she would be able to break through to the 9th layer of core forging and condense a high-grade golden core. However, this was clearly not something that the current Lu Qi-ner could enjoy. For a moment, Lu Ping seemed to be at a loss of what to do. If he couldn't extract the 3 teardrops, then he would be unable to use the ready-made treasures. With no other choice, Lu Ping could only put all his energy back into the 20 handkerchief handwriting of Jiao Daoren. He wanted to see if he could comprehend a trace of the essence of swordsmanship hidden in Jiao Daoren's handwriting. However, at this moment, Lu Ping suddenly discovered that the Dragon Dharma idol had unknowingly spat out the pure yang pearl, and it was currently floating above the silk handkerchief. Lu Ping was stunned. His divine sense penetrated the pure yang pearl, and to his surprise he discovered that traces of pure yang qi were being emitted from the silk handkerchief and were gathering towards the pure yang pearl in midair. Even the teardrops contained pure yang qi. No matter how Lu Ping thought about it, he was afraid that only a mighty figure like Luan Taoist could achieve this state of plucking a hair to benefit the world. Lu Ping was naturally overjoyed. Although he had spent most of his energy on the silk handkerchief while drifting on the Qingning River, Lu Ping's cultivation had still ushered in a period of rapid growth. The reason was that after Lu Ping had survived the first lightning tribulation, the pure yang soul of flying Laozu had condensed into a ball of essence, which was being continuously absorbed by the Dragon Dharma idol. As the Dragon Dharma idol absorbed, refined, and fused with the pure yang qi, the pure yang pearl was gradually refined by the Dragon Dharma idol. Unknowingly, it made Lu Ping think of a divine object like the dragon pearl. However, in this world, other than the Longhui ancestor, the word dragon had never appeared, let alone the dragon pearl. Just as the pure yang qi that was hidden in the teardrops in the silk handkerchief was absorbed by the pure yang pearl, Lu Ping's divine sense suddenly discovered that the 3 teardrops had come alive. Of course, it was not that the 3 teardrops had come alive, but that the 3 teardrops were finally no longer as indifferent to any of Lu Ping's methods as before. Under Linglong's repeated confirmation and Lu Ping's repeated promises, Linglong finally agreed to help Lu Ping extract the 3 teardrops from the silk handkerchief. The condition was naturally that Linglong would leave enough benefits in the teardrops. Therefore, Linglong had already decided that after absorbing the essence of the phoenix teardrops, it would be time for Lu Ping to summon the second lightning tribulation. Chapter 1176. The 3 teardrops were carefully placed into a jade essence bottle by Lu Ping. After thinking for a bit, Lu Ping poured out another teardrop into his palm and began to sense its aura. After all, this was something from Sky Splitter Laozu. Even though it was only a teardrop, perhaps it contained something useful to Lu Ping. As for the other teardrop, Lu Ping didn't give it to Linglong or Lu Qi-ner. Lu Qi-ner wanted this teardrop to sense the aura of Luan Taoist. Lu Qi-ner was a wind and fire dual cultivator, but this teardrop was a water source in the end, so it wouldn't be of too much help to her own cultivation. What was truly useful to the main body was Linglong, so despite Linglong's reluctance, Lu Ping still gave the teardrop to Lu Qi-ner first to sense it. Lu Ping himself was also carefully inspecting one of the Luan teardrops. Just before, after Lu Ping used the pure yang bead to strip away the trace of pure yang energy from the 3 Luan teardrops, there was a moment when the talisman Lu Ping condensed in the Dharma manifestation's auspicious cloud throbbed. Lu Ping's senses were sharp. In just an instant, he discovered that the talisman that was affected by the Luan's aura was actually the talisman that Lu Ping had been trying to cultivate for a long time but had failed twice. The bubbling sky-filling sword art was an extremely strange technique. Although it was a water attribute technique, it carried a trace of something related to the fire attribute. Originally, this sword technique of Lu Ping might be a dual cultivator of water and fire, but at his current level of cultivation, his vision and knowledge were far from what it used to be. Soon, he found that this sword technique was not like that. Instead, it was greatly influenced by Xie Tianyang. Back when Xie Tianyang exchanged the cultivation method of the boiling sky sword technique from Lu Ping, he said that there was a senior of Purple Sun Palace, Laozu, who believed that this sword technique had many wondrous uses and revelations for fire and water. It was also very useful for cultivators who cultivated these two attributes, so he exchanged this sword technique with Lu Ping. But in reality, Lu Ping was misled by Xie Tianyang. It was not that this sword technique was completely unrelated to the fire attribute, but this sword technique was a genuine water attribute sword technique. However, in the process of cultivating this sword technique, if one wanted to achieve success, they would need an external help. Or perhaps, this should be a dual cultivator sword technique. This external assistance was a fire-attributed sword technique, or fire-attributed divine ability that was compatible with the bubbling heaven sword art. The so-called fire and water complementing each other didn't mean that the cultivator who cultivated this sword art had to cultivate both fire and water at the same time. Instead, the cultivator who cultivated another fire-attributed sword technique, or fire-attributed cultivation method needed to lend a helping hand. Only then would the cultivator be able to reach the highest realm of this sword art. The ancestors of the overwhelming sky sect described this sword technique as a pot of hot soup that needed fire to be added to boil. In fact, this was not wrong. However, the boiling hot soup was still separated from the fire by a layer of the pot. In the end, it couldn't be considered true fire and water complementing each other, but it was borrowing the power of the fire. But now, for some inexplicable reason, the Luan's tear bead had become a catalyst for Lu Ping's sky-boiling sword art. The tear was still based on water. In the past, the Luan Taoists didn't only use fire attribute abilities to dominate the world. However, the Luan Taoist himself liked to live in places with volcanoes and magma. These places were all extremely rich in fire attribute origin energy. Because of this, the Fire Phoenix clan was the most powerful among the direct descendants of the Luan Taoist. Moreover, the Fire Phoenix clan believed that the Luan Taoist was originally from the Fire Phoenix clan. However, when one reached the level of the Luan Taoist, there were no clear differences between water, fire, wood, or wind spells. This was why the descendants didn't know the origin of the Luan Taoist. If this was really the case, then the Luan Taoist tear contained a strong fire attribute origin energy. However, the tear itself still appeared as a tear. This made sense. After all, the abilities of the Sky Splitter Laozu were not something that these cultivators could figure out. Lu Ping knew that this was his chance. Following the inexplicable aura and the teardrop, the spinning chain kill talisman suddenly shone brightly and absorbed the teardrop that was once soaked in the fire element into the talisman. Then, the dragon avatar suddenly raised its head and the reverse scale on its neck shone with a purplish golden light. The talisman was attracted to the reverse scale and began to construct a new skill seed. In the blink of an eye, Lu Ping had acquired another great innate skill. Among the 4 fundamental abilities of the Boiling Sky Sword Technique, the Serial Killing Technique, the Seeping Sword Technique, and the Drowning Sword Technique had all been successfully condensed into great abilities. Only the Boiling Water Sword Technique, which Lu Ping had always been clueless about, was left. Not even the talisman had been formed in the Dharma manifestation's auspicious cloud. Naturally, Lu Ping would not let go of this opportunity. In the middle of the Dharma manifestation's auspicious cloud, a purple golden mist suddenly began to condense, rolling like boiling water. Even the whole core space was filled with the sound of water boiling. The boiling water sword technique, which he had been studying for many years, was suddenly formed at this moment. After an unknown amount of time, in the middle of the Dharma manifestation's auspicious cloud, a talisman gradually condensed. No matter where this talisman swam in the auspicious cloud around it suddenly began to churn violently, as if it was boiling. The magical talisman of the boiling water sword technique was finally condensed. Naturally, Lu Ping wouldn't let go of such a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He focused all his attention on his heart core, and the serial whirlwind kill that he condensed into the seed of the boiling water sword skill, seeping water sword skill, and drowning water sword skill, immediately became the bridge between the boiling water sword skill, seeping water sword skill, and drowning sword skill. The Dharma manifestation of the dragon was churning up and down in the core space, and the real essence in Lu Ping's blood was like a flowing river, gathering all the real essence into the core space. The sound of the Qingming River flowing towards the south had been replaced by the sound of Goyalu, Goyalu. On the surface of the river, with a radius of more than 1,000 feet around Black Tortoise, the Qingming River seemed to be boiling, and a large number of bubbles appeared. Countless Kui water essence was absorbed from the river and gathered in Lu Ping's body. Lu Ping's clothes were suddenly all wet. At the same time, Lu Ping's Black Tortoise also benefited. Taking advantage of the time when Lu Ping was absorbing the essence of the Qingming River, Black Tortoise greedily absorbed the essence of the water, and its cultivation began to grow rapidly. At this time, Lu Ping simply released Sam Ling, letting the three of them take the opportunity to cultivate, and at the same time, protect him when he was in closed-door cultivation. As the sun rose and set, the upstream and downstream of the Qingming River where Lu Ping was located, within a radius of 5 miles, was filled with the mist of the river, and it lasted for 2 years. The strange scene of the dense fog sealing the river naturally quickly attracted the attention of the nearby cultivators. Some cultivators were attracted over and took the risk to enter the fog to investigate the situation, but they suddenly discovered that this place was actually filled with dense water element spirit energy. These cultivators were naturally overjoyed. To be able to gather such rich spiritual qi, there must be some great treasure in the Qingming River, so they naturally wanted to explore further into the depths of the mist. Unexpectedly, before they could go deeper, they were inexplicably knocked out by an attack and thrown out of the Qingming River. However, this method not only did not stop the greed of the cultivators, but also made the news spread more and more widely, attracting the attention of more cultivators, including some high-level cultivators in the sections. However, when these late core forging adepts, who were high and mighty in the eyes of ordinary cultivators, entered the mist and were thrown out of the Qingming River like dead dogs, finally a portion of the cultivators realized that something was wrong, and slowly began to retreat. However, such a strange scene happening on the Qingming River, in the end, there was still a portion of cultivators who were unconvinced and called for the intervention of Fa Xiang Laozu. However, when other Dharma adepts entered the fog, they would usually hear an earth-shattering battle from within the fog, after which everything became silent. Just as the cultivators outside the fog were wondering what was going on, the Dharma adept walked out of the fog with a strange look on his face. He then warned the cultivators waiting outside the fog that the person in the middle of the Qingming River was a powerful cultivator who was cultivating in seclusion. They were not to enter and disturb the senior cultivator's cultivation. When the news spread, many of the cultivators who thought that it was some kind of treasure were naturally disappointed, and they all turned back. Some greedy cultivators saw that even Fa Xiang Laozu could not do anything about it, and could only suppress the greed in their hearts. However, there were still some cultivators who stayed outside the mist, trying to use the dense water-based spiritual qi in the mist to start cultivating, and the powerful cultivator hidden in the mist obviously did not make a move to chase these cultivators away. And just as these Dharma adepts left, the cultivation world finally spread another piece of shocking news. There was a powerful cultivator of the green sea snakes swimming in the Qingming River to cultivate in seclusion, causing the mist to lock the river. The news was accurate. One after another, a few Dharma adepts entered the mist to investigate, but they were blocked by the combined forces of 3 green sea snakes. These 3 green sea snakes were a wind snake, a water snake, and an ice snake, all of which had the authentic bloodline of the green sea snakes. The 3 snakes were all at the peak of the core forging stage, but their abilities were not inferior to the direct disciples of the 5 Holy Lands who had condensed the 9th grade golden core. The 3 snakes joined forces to fight against every Dharma adept that entered the mist, and then explained the reason to them. It turned out that the elders of these 3 green sea snakes suddenly had an epiphany when they were traveling in the Qingming River, and so they began to cultivate in seclusion in the Qingming River. The 3 young cultivators naturally had to protect their elders. As for the mist that filled the sky, it was formed by the powerful cultivator of the green sea snakes, who had extracted the essence of the water element from the Qingming River during his cultivation. Many early Dharma adepts had been defeated by the 3 of them, and even 2 mid-Dharma adepts from mid-sized sects had entered the mist, but in the end, they did not have the upper hand. Even if there were strong mid-Dharma adepts who had the upper hand, after the 3 snakes revealed their identities, they all showed signs of fear. No one was willing to offend the green sea snakes for no reason. Chapter 1177. On this day, a middle-aged cultivator was riding a giant anaconda downstream of the Qingming River. He traveled upstream and arrived in front of the mist that covered most of the Qingming River. At this moment, a deafening roar suddenly came from the depths of the fog. It was like a huge pot of boiling water was surging and churning. The mist covering the surface of the river churned violently. Many of the low-level cultivators who had been cultivating within the mist for the past 2 years cried out in shock as they quickly flew out from the mist. Then they saw that the mist covering the surface of the river for the past 2 days was rapidly shrinking. The middle-aged cultivator was slightly surprised, but then he smiled and said, "What a coincidence!" As the mist shrank, the middle-aged cultivator leisurely strolled in the direction of the mist. When the mist had shrunk to a size of 300 jaan, the middle-aged cultivator finally came to a halt. At that moment, the mist was roiling even more violently. The "Golyalu, Golyalu" sound was so loud that even the middle-aged cultivator could feel a wave of heat assaulting his face. The middle-aged cultivator was taken aback for a moment. Instantly, he realized that there was no real heatwave charging towards him. Rather, it was an illusion that his soul was experiencing. Or perhaps, it was just a feeling. The heatwave was actually charging towards his soul in the first place. The Surging Heavens Sect's Surging Heavens sword art is truly unique. The middle-aged cultivator nodded in praise. At this moment, the mist finally shrunk completely, disappearing into the body of a young cultivator. Beneath his feet, a huge black tortoise floated silently above the azure nether river, and behind him stood 3 youths around the age of 15 or 16. This young cultivator was naturally Lu Ping, and the one standing behind him was naturally Sam Ling. The middle-aged cultivator smiled at Lu Ping, then looked at the Sam Ling behind Lu Ping with a satisfied expression. He then looked at the giant Xian tortoise beneath Lu Ping's feet and said in surprise, "The tyrannical tortoise bloodline! Your Excellency is truly becoming more and more astonishing." Lu Ping seemed to have already sensed the arrival of the middle-aged cultivator. He only smiled slightly and said, "Your Excellency, did you come from the East Sea for the Samling?" The middle-aged cultivator was surprised that Lu Ping could see through him at a glance. One must know that the middle-aged cultivator's cultivation was far above Lu Ping's. He was confident that even the Samling behind Lu Ping would not be able to discover that he was from the same clan. However, he was seen through by Lu Ping at a glance. This caused the middle-aged cultivator to put away his contempt. His expression became much more solemn. He laughed and said, "I am Chu Yuntian from the Green Sea Snake Wind Snake Clan. Greetings, Lu Daoyu." Lu Ping naturally did not dare to slight him. He also bowed and said, "Lu Tianping from the North Sea greets you, Senior. May I know if you have come specially for the Samling?" Chu Yuntian smiled and said, "Lu Xiaoyu has made such a big movement in the Central Plains. Even the Green Sea snakes in the East Sea have heard the news. Tsunami and Haiwan naturally did not dare to hide the fact that you have the green sea snakes following you. Hence, I came to the Central Plains. Lu Ping nodded. He had a sudden inspiration on the Qingming River. In order to seize this fleeting opportunity, he had to go into seclusion on the spot by the Fog Lock River. In order not to be disturbed during his seclusion, he had to summon Samling to protect him. At that time, he already knew that the identity of Samling could not be maintained. Hence, he was already prepared for the arrival of the Green Sea Snakes. As for the Green Sea Snakes, they had always been a race that valued their own clansmen. The sudden news from the Central Plains that a great medic of the Green Sea Snakes was on the Qingming River in seclusion on the spot by the Fog Lock River. This naturally caused the Green Sea Snakes to be extremely surprised and attach great importance to it. Since when did a cultivator from their clan go to the Middle Earth? Who would be so reckless as to enter seclusion on the Azure Nether River with 3 juniors? Furthermore, from the information they received, these 3 juniors were actually a wind serpent, a water serpent, and an ice serpent. Impressively, they were the 3 most powerful tribes of the Emerald Sea Spirit Snake clan. This time, Chu Yutian came to the Central Plains to investigate this matter. If there was really a cultivator from the Green Sea Snakes who was cultivating outside, Chu Yutian naturally had to lend a helping hand. He would protect the cultivator and protect the 3 younger disciples at the same time. If someone was impersonating the cultivator, or someone had kidnapped the younger disciples of the Green Sea Snakes, then Chu Yuntian's mission would naturally become a thunderbolt. Unexpectedly, on the eve of Chu Yuntian's departure, the outstanding disciples of the 3rd generation, Chu Haitian's cousin, and Chu Hailan, the surprising disciple from the Fire Snake clan, came together to report Lu Ping's matter to the elders of the Green Sea Snakes. At the same time, they also insisted that Lu Ping did not seal Samling's divine sense and identity as Samling's follower. They also insisted on the deep relationship between Samling and Lu Ping. With the explanation of Chu Haitian and the other 2, the identity of Samling's direct descendant was no longer in doubt. At the same time, the Green Sea Snakes gradually divided into 2 groups. One group naturally wanted to bring Samling back to the clan. How could the bloodline of the Green Sea Snakes wander outside? As for Lu Tianping, although they would not kill him, they would still punish him slightly. The other group of cultivators was also a little hesitant because Chu Haitian and the others insisted on the identity of Samling's follower. This was because the Green Sea Snakes allowed their clansmen to become the followers of powerful cultivators. The Emerald Sea Spirit Snake clan had never been a clan that was complacent. They knew the principle of learning from others. Although they had the best bloodline inheritance in the world, they also hoped that their clansmen could learn more from outsiders to promote their own clan's progress. Otherwise, the Emerald Sea Spirit Snake clan would not have chased the arrogant primordial giant crocodile from the East Sea to the desolate North Sea cultivation world. He was just a practitioner from a medium-sized sect in the North Sea cultivation world. No matter how one looked at it, Lu Tianping could not be associated with the great divines. Even though Chu Haixiao and the others had repeatedly praised Lu Tianping for his prowess, he was at most a minor mid-dharma adept like Chu Haixiao. At best, he could only be considered a great divines in the future, but he was far from qualified now. Just as the 2 groups were in a stalemate, 3 great cultivator elders of the Green Sea Snakes stood up and said that they might as well wait and see. He had to wait and see what level Lu Tianping could reach in the future. After all, Chu Haixiao had already passed on part of the secret techniques of the Emerald Sea Spirit Snake to the 3 spirits. This way, before the 3 spirits reached the mid-dharma stage, their growth would not be delayed. Taking a look, they might as well send out an elder to evaluate him, to see if his strength and character could reach a high enough level in the future. After all, Samling and Lu Tianping were like father and son. If they really brought Samling back by force, it might backfire. These 3 great cultivator elders were none other than the 1st generation elder Chu Fuyu, Chu Tianya, and the 2nd generation elder Chu Tianyu, who had received help from Lu Ping during the Battle of the Illusionary 5 Islands. These 3 were the ones who had the most authority in the Green Sea Snakes. Their suggestion was finally agreed by everyone, and they unanimously sent Chu Yutian all the way to the Qingming River. Chu Yutian saw that Samling was looking at him and smiled. After all, you all have the bloodline of the green sea snakes. Your race will eventually return. How about it? Are you willing to return to the East Sea with the old man? Samling did not hesitate at all and shook his head in rejection. Chu Yutian did not say anything else. Instead, he smiled at Lu Ping. However, when Lu Ping saw Chu Yutian's smile, his expression immediately changed. He flung his body backward and opened the space door of the Golden House, keeping Samling inside. Then, instead of retreating, he moved forward and stretched out his hand to push backward. Whoosh! No one knew when Lu Ping had grown a tail behind him. The curled tail was obviously aimed at the back of Samling. However, Lu Ping had noticed it in advance and kept Samling first. Since he could not persuade Lu Ping, he was going to rob him by force. Lu Ping moved forward and blocked Chu Yuntian's sneak attack. However, it did not seem to be beyond Chu Yuntian's expectations. Instead, he fell into a trap that Chu Yuntian had already set up. In reality, when a great adept suddenly used a sneak attack to attack Lu Ping already knew that what would follow would be a series of attacks like a storm. His opponent would not give Lu Ping any time to breathe. Chu Yutian was treating Lu Ping as an equal opponent. He was not treating Lu Ping like a great adept would treat a junior at the mid-Dharma stage. Chu Yutian opened his mouth and spat out a black cloud. However, it turned into a billowing black wind that rushed towards Lu Ping, who had no choice but to pounce on him. The black wind was like a bone-grinding blade, while the black cloud was like a bone-corroding poison. The two combined and rolled, trapping Lu Ping, who could not dodge in time. A look of disappointment flashed across Chu Yuntian's face. Although his opponent was only a great adept at the mid-Dharma stage, even if the green sea snakes did not value Lu Ping's abilities, he had not yet become a great medic. If Lu Ping's abilities were not unique among his peers, how would the green sea snakes dare to entrust their own junior to him? Chu Yutian was very clear that although he was a great adept at the late Dharma stage, Chu Haitian was also a great Dharma adept. However, Chu Haitian was able to easily break through Chu Yutian's technique. Although Chu Haitian had repeatedly claimed that Lu Tianping's abilities were not below his, Chu Yutian still had some doubts. Lu Tianping had come from a poor place like China, so it was fine if he was a little more outstanding. However, how could he be compared to the first of the 3 generations of the green sea snakes? Chu Haitian seemed to be a person who valued friendship and friendship. Chu Yutian was most likely exaggerating on Lu Tianping's behalf. However, this remarkable power did not require Lu Tianping to completely break through like Nephew Tsunami. As long as Lu Tianping could withstand the power of the remarkable power, he would pass. Chu Yutian thought to himself. However, before this thought flashed through Chu Yutian's mind, a flying sword suddenly appeared in the space between Black Wind and Chu Yutian. It was a blue flying sword. Because of the black wind swirling clouds in front of him, Chu Yutian did not need to use any defensive treasures. If he wanted to pose a threat to Chu Yutian, he would first have to break through or withstand the remarkable power in front of him. However, suddenly, a flying sword appeared in front of the two of them, piercing towards the chest of Chu Yutian, who only had time to cast his defensive remarkable power. The layers of vigor chi that were used to block the attack were shattered one by one. Chapter 1178. The protective magic of a great cultivator was naturally not so easily pierced. However, the water nether sword was no longer the flying sword that relied purely on stealth to assassinate its opponent. Having survived the first thunder tribulation, even in a head-on battle, it was not something that Chu Yuntian's hurried protective gang chi could block. Chu Yuntian's eyes were wide open as he stared at the nether water sword that was less than a foot away from his chest. He suddenly opened his mouth and shouted. A long spear with a forked tip shot out and struck the tip of the nether water sword before it could pierce his chest. The forked snake spear was naturally formed from the snake tongue of Chu Yuntian's main body. Although the nether water sword had struck its target, the expression on Chu Yuntian's face was contorted. It was obvious that he was enduring immense pain. However, before the nether water sword could be sent flying, an arm suddenly stretched out from the place covered by the black clouds. It firmly grasped the nether water sword, and then casually chopped down. A sword light drew down a bolt of lightning in the air, killing with lightning speed. At this moment, Chu Yuntian was still unprepared because of Lu Ping's sneak attack. Thunderclap sword technique, divine water lightning! Chu Yuntian let out a strange cry. He naturally knew that Chu Tianya had once passed the inheritance of the Thunderclap sword art to Lu Ping, but he did not expect Lu Ping to have already mastered its innate great ability so quickly. Moreover, under the cover of the divine sunflower water lightning, its power had more than doubled. In the end, Chu Yuntian was not an ordinary great cultivator. Just as the lightning sword was about to strike him, he forcibly tore open a spatial door behind him. His entire body shrunk backwards, and he immediately disappeared into it. However, as the lightning descended, it became like mercury pouring down from every pore. Before Chu Yuntian's spatial door had completely closed, the lightning had already penetrated through the crack that was left behind. Seeping water sword technique. Lu Ping was already proficient in switching between great abilities. The moment he used the thunderclap sword technique, he had already hidden a variety of changes, waiting for his opponent to change before launching another thunderous attack. Dozens of feet away, a spatial door exploded, and Chu Yuntian fell out of it in a rather sorry state. If not for Chu Yuntian's deep attainments in spatial doors, he would most likely have suffered a loss at Lu Ping's hands. Chu Yuntian looked warily at the blue flying sword hovering in Lu Ping's hand, waiting for an opportunity. He thought to himself, "What a wonderful swordsmanship ability, and what a profound attainment in swordsmanship. Just based on that previous strike, this boy's strength cannot possibly be suppressed by the tsunami." However, what was even more surprising was that under the attack of the black wind and black mist, Lu Ping actually broke out of it unscathed. One must know that the black mist was a vital poison that Chu Yuntian had nurtured in his body for more than 1,000 years. It was a first-class poison in the cultivation world, and the black wind was called the bone-crushing wind. It specialized in damaging the flesh and bones of cultivators, and was the most difficult to defend against. Such two abilities were easily blocked by Lu Ping. Chu Yuntian felt that he had a very good understanding of Lu Ping's strength. He thought to himself that if this person did not die prematurely, it would be quite something to look forward to. In order to understand Lu Ping's strength, Chu Yuntian had taken him by surprise at the beginning. Now that he thought that he had a good understanding of Lu Ping's strength, he wanted to stop and say a few words of encouragement to Lu Ping. Unexpectedly, Lu Ping had almost suffered a great loss. In particular, that black wind had almost pierced through Lu Ping's protective magic power, scraping off a layer of his skin and flesh, and had even pierced into his bones. It was obviously a kind of vicious magic power that specialized in damaging the flesh of cultivators. At this time, how could Lu Ping let go? How could he stop just because Chu Yuntian had the intention of stopping? He was just a late Dharma adept. So what if he was a green sea snake? The netherworld aqua sword flashed away. Chu Yuntian was about to speak, but a smile of praise immediately appeared on his face. However, before he could change his words and explain anything, Lu Ping's twin flying swords had already crisscrossed and slashed towards Chu Yuntian. Previously, when he had killed Nanyu Laozu in the South China Sea, it had mostly been because of the sword of the real spirit, Amoli, which had only given Lu Ping the confidence that he had the strength to fight against a great adept. However, when he had ambushed and killed Sweat Laozu in the forest, it had given Lu Ping a sufficient understanding of his own cultivation level and strength. He was just a great Dharma adept, and Lu Ping really did not need to worry too much about him. Although this time it was Lu Ping who had taken the initiative to attack, Chu Yuntian had already regained his composure and was not as flustered as before. Moreover, he was a great adept after all, and as an elder of the Green Sea Snakes, his strength was not weaker than Hanya Laozu's. consecutive flying whirlwind technique, seeping water technique, drowning water technique, boiling water technique. The 4 major natural remarkable powers were displayed one after another in the twin flying swords. Lu Ping had obviously used Chu Yuntian as a touchstone to practice his own natural remarkable swordsmanship. This lad's natural remarkable swordsmanship was actually so brilliant. Although Chu Yutian was secretly surprised that Lu Ping's natural remarkable swordsmanship was flowing at will in midair, like flowing mercury, one wave after another, causing one to lose sight of the other. However, he still looked at Lu Ping's sword scholar with a scrutinizing gaze. He did not think that Lu Ping would be able to do anything to him. The two of them fought for more than 10 rounds, and Chu Yutian very quickly gained the upper hand. Although the snake's spear was only a first calamity spiritual treasure, it was extremely strange and difficult to deal with. But at this moment, Chu Yutian watched as Lu Ping cast the 4 sets of skills back and forth. Although Lu Ping's swordsmanship was becoming more and more fluid, Chu Yutian wasn't so weak that he couldn't even suppress the 4 sets of skills. At this time, Chu Yutian suddenly understood that the kid in front of him was not angry because of the previous humiliation, but most likely used him as a practice target. When Chu Yutian first saw him, Lu Ping knew that there was a reason for Chu Yutian's sudden attack just now. Chu Yutian was not here to kill him. Otherwise, Chu Yutian would not have waited for him to master the sky-boiling sword technique before making a move. However, Chu Yutian definitely did not hold back in this kind of abrupt test. Those who were hit by this strange method would be severely injured even if they did not die. Perhaps Chu Yutian had a way to remedy this, but Lu Ping agreed that Chu Yutian's idea was nothing more than to avoid it. If not, then naturally he deserved to die. Lu Ping was annoyed, but for the sake of Samling, he could not shed all pretense of cordiality with the green sea snakes. However, Lu Ping could not stop at this point. He must teach this old man a lesson. Chu Yuntian thought he had the situation under control. He chuckled and was about to explain to Lu Ping when he was suddenly interrupted by a loud commotion. His laughter was suppressed to an inaudible whisper. Chu Yuntian thought he had the situation under control. Chu Yutian was stunned. This sound was the same as the one that suddenly sounded on the Qingming River. However, this time, the sound was very different. The sound of boiling water still rang clearly in Chu Yuntian's mind even though he had temporarily shut off his hearing. At this time, Chu Yuntian did not want to be entangled with Lu Ping anymore. Lu Ping's strength had already gained his recognition. If they continued to fight like this, even if Chu Yuntian wanted to explain, both parties would become enemies. Although the green sea snakes had never been afraid of anything, it was not a wise thing to make enemies with someone who might appear in the future. Looking at Xiao Baiyu's current status in the world of practitioners, this matter could not be clearer. And when Chu Yuntian wanted to explain something, he suddenly realized that only his mouth was moving. Even he himself could not hear the sound of his own words. This was not just the sound of his voice being suppressed. How could a great late Dharma adept not even be able to speak? Was this a divine will attack? Chu Yutian was stunned. Only then did he feel that the sound of boiling water seemed to be getting louder and louder in his ears. However, his mind was getting hotter and hotter, as if it was a pot of water that was being heated. Then, he felt as if he was trapped in a sky full of boiling water, like a fish that was about to be cooked. The thin water-flowing sword formed a vast ocean in midair. Every bubble that emerged from the ocean would turn into a large bubble that was condensed by the sword chi. When it exploded, it was like a burst of thousands of swords, catching people off guard. This was because no one could predict where the bubbles would come from under the water. Lu Ping saw that the boiling sky sword technique did not disappoint him. When the huge field of sword light was formed, it was like a pot of boiling water. Chu Yutian was caught off guard and fell into it. Although it did not cause him any harm, he was at a loss for a moment. His divine will condensed. After all, Chu Yutian was a great adept. After the initial panic, he immediately realized that the heat in his divine will was actually just an illusion. After he condensed his huge divine will, he suddenly shouted, "Break!" The snake's spear suddenly turned into 81 thin snakes in midair, stirring up huge waves in the sword field formed by the dual flying swords. At the same time, his divine will suddenly turned into a strong gust of wind, sweeping the illusion in his mind into pieces. The supreme boiling sky sword technique was actually broken by Chu Yuntian in an instant. However, what Chu Yuntian did not notice was that just as the illusion in his mind was broken, a jade-green flame had already taken a step ahead of the illusion in a flash, disappearing from Lu Ping's divine will. And the sword field formed by the dual flying swords was actually broken. This time, Lu Ping did not continue to attack. Ha ha! There was a flash of fear in Chu Yuntian's heart, but he still put on an expression that said, "You're very good." Everything was already under the old man's control. He said, "Lu Xiao's swordsmanship is really sharp. The old man's attack just now was too rash. However, I have an important task in the clan, so I have to have a better understanding of Lu Xiao's strength. If you can't overcome the old man, the three little guys can only follow the old man back to Donghai. But now it seems that Lu Xiao's strength is quite convincing." Lu Ping was delighted and said, "So, senior, you agreed to let Samling return to Donghai to accept the bloodline inheritance of the Green Sea Snakes?" However, Chu Yuntian shook his head and said, "The three little guys are naturally not a problem. The problem is Lu Xiaoyu. If you want Samling to continue to follow us, you must pass the test of the clan. Now, the old man is the first test. In the future you will have to face at least 2 more tests when you come to Donghai. This will depend on your own efforts. Of course, you'd better get to Donghai within 100 years. Otherwise, the inheritance of Samling may be affected." Chapter 1179. The battle between Lu Ping and Nanyu Laozu was a fight to the death, and the battle with Hanya Laozu was a hasty one. Only the battle with Chu Yuntian could be considered a battle that Lu Ping had long prepared for. In the battle with Nanyu Laozu, Lu Ping had relied on the sword of the real spirit, Emoli. In the battle with Hanya Laozu, Lu Ping had completely established the confidence to fight against late Dharma adepts. Therefore, in this battle with Chu Yuntian, Lu Ping could be considered to be at ease from start to finish. Chu Yuntian smiled and said, "Please let the 3 little ones out, Lu Xiaoyu. The old man has some gifts for them." The Green Sea Snakes had always loved each other, and this was especially true for the younger generation. Previously, Chu Haitian and Chu Hailan had both given gifts when they met Samling. This time, Chu Yuntian was no exception. Lu Ping was naturally happy to let Samling benefit, so he opened the space portal. However, when Samling appeared, he looked at Chu Yuntian with an expression of hostility. Chu Yuntian laughed bitterly, and Lu Ping explained the situation to Samling. Only then did the expression on Samling's face lighten up. Although Samling looked like he was only 15 or 16 years old, he still had some of the nature of a child. Seeing that Chu Yuntian was originally an elder of the tribe, he already felt a sense of closeness in his heart. If not for the fact that he had suddenly become an enemy of Lu Ping, Samling would not have been so hostile towards Chu Yuntian. However, after Chu Yuntian explained the situation, and seeing the gifts that Chu Yuntian had given them, Samling thanked him and hid in a corner, giggling and comparing the gifts. Seeing Samling like this, Chu Yuntian also smiled and said to Lu Ping, "Lu Xiaoyu has put in a lot of effort for these 3 children. All 3 of them have condensed a 9th-grade golden core. Even among the 3rd-generation disciples of the tribe, their status is equivalent to the status of direct descendants like Tsunami and Haitu. Now, among the 4th-generation disciples of the tribe, there is not a single one who has reached the peak of the core forging stage." Seeing that Lu Ping was smiling without saying anything, Chu Yuntian thought for a moment, then said, "I will not hide this from you, little friend. If Samling returns to the tribe in the future, I am afraid that you will have to be prepared for a more severe test." Lu Ping frowned and said, "What do you mean?" Chu Yutian said with a smile. The 3 children are too outstanding. Do you think the stubborn elders of our tribe will agree to let such outstanding children be their followers? Lu Ping was silent, his expression uncertain. No one knew what he was thinking. Chu Yutian chuckled and said, That is all the old man has said. Lu Xiaoyu, you are on your own. In short, even if our tribe has the power to hinder you, little friend, the green sea snakes have their own rules. As long as you follow the rules, no one can say anything. As he spoke, he had disappeared. Lu Ping was not surprised at all. Therefore, Lu Ping could clearly sense that Chu Yutian had just used an extremely brilliant water-escaping technique. If it was any other cultivator, perhaps they would feel bewildered by Chu Yutian's miraculous way of disappearing. If they were more suspicious, they might even think that Chu Yutian was hiding at the side, waiting for an opportunity to launch a sneak attack. Chu Yutian had been forced into a slightly embarrassing situation by Lu Ping before. Chu Yutian had used this secret technique this time to save some face. However, if he knew that Lu Ping had seen through him with just a glance, he would probably be even more depressed for a long time. Lu Ping's divine sense swept out, and all the cultivators hiding within a radius of dozens of miles retreated in shock. The battle between Lu Ping and Chu Yutian just now had attracted the attention of many cultivators. At this time, those who knew Lu Tianping of the North Sea naturally knew that this person was a cultivator in the cultivation world who was not weaker than the heir of a holy land. Naturally, they did not dare to provoke him again. Even if there were those who did not know Lu Tianping of the North Sea, when they saw that Lu Ping was actually able to fight against a peak cultivator, they naturally did not dare to cause trouble. Seeing Lu Ping's divine sense sweeping out, everyone naturally avoided him. Lu Ping, who had mastered the third supreme divine sense, was naturally in a good mood. He did not care about those cultivators who were still far behind him, trying to find out his whereabouts. With a slight stomp of his feet, Lu Dague's huge body shook slightly. Once again, he split the turbulent Qingming River and swam upstream. Lu Ping's original purpose for this trip was to perfect the east-flowing river sword skill. He wanted to create a peerless sword skill to be passed down to the future generations. But who would have thought that before he could master the east-flowing river sword skill, he would first create a peerless sword skill called sky-boiling sword skill. However, before he could comprehend the sword technique, Lu Ping had to continue his journey in the Qingming River. However, this time, Lu Ping did not hide the existence of the Samling. In the water around the Black Tortoise, the Samling happily played with each other. As the spirits of the water, wherever the Black Tortoise passed, the Qingming River would be stirred up by them. However, with Lu Ping's suppression, there was no need to worry about the danger of the flood breaking the dam. The Qingming River was the largest river in the central region. Naturally, there were demons in the water. However, after noticing the previous battle and the aura of the top-level bloodline of the green sea snakes, most of the demons in the Qingming River chose to stay dormant, and let the Samling stir up the wind and rain on the river. After Chu Yutian's previous test, the green sea snakes temporarily admitted that Lu Ping had the qualification of Samling as an inheritor. However, Lu Ping also knew that after Chu Yutian came to test him and brought back the news of Samling's current cultivation, especially the news that Samling had condensed a level 9 gold core, Lu Ping would inevitably encounter more difficulties in the green sea snakes in the future. Whether the green sea snakes approved of their clansmen becoming followers of others or not, they would unite to resist Lu Ping and take the Samling away from their clansmen under the principle of not breaking the rules of their clansmen. Even among the green sea snakes, how many disciples of the younger generation who had condensed a level 9 gold core could appear? And those who appeared were all cultivated with the power of their clansmen. How could they be willing to let go of them to become followers of others? Lu Ping and the others went along the river. After a long time, the surface of the Qingming River became smoother and wider. The river wind blew, and only the sound of the waves when the Samling played could be heard. The river became more and more quiet. The Samlings seemed to notice something and seemed to be tired of playing. He shrunk his body and climbed onto the back of the black tortoise. Lu Ping stood at the front of the black tortoise's shell and looked at the river in front of him with bright eyes, as if he was enjoying the scenery of the river in the far distance. At this moment, Lu Ping suddenly sneered and said, "Is this interesting? When are you going to hide your head and show your tail?" Humph! A cold snort suddenly exploded in Lu Ping's ears. However, Lu Ping still looked calm and relaxed. However, the corner of his eye twitched slightly. So it was another great adept of the late Dharma stage. Only someone from a poor place like the North Sea who has never seen the world would act so ostentatiously on the Qi Ming River. Young lad, do you really think that the Central Plains practitioners are easy to deal with? An old voice came from the river. However, Lu Ping immediately turned his gaze to the void in the northeast direction and laughed. I was wondering who it was. So it's Ma Sith Great Mali. I haven't seen you for more than 100 years, but Elder Ma looks rather hale and hearty. It looks like you've already passed the second thunder trial and have another 200 years to live. As soon as Lu Ping finished speaking, an old man stepped out from the void in the northeast direction where Lu Ping could see. It was the fourth elder of the Tenma people, Mali, who had chased after Lu Ping and the others for thousands of miles in the west. At this moment, the fourth elder of the Tenma people seemed to have an unfathomable aura. It was obvious that he had already passed the second thunder trial and had become a great adept of the late Dharma stage. However, he did not look too good now. It was obvious that he had not expected Lu Ping to be able to see through his concealment with just one look. Following the appearance of Ma Sith Great, two more mid-Dharma adepts of the Tenma people appeared on the surface of the river a few hundred feet behind Lu Ping. It was obvious that they wanted to block off Lu Ping's escape route. Even though he was surrounded by a great adept and two adepts of the same level, Lu Ping did not panic at all. Instead, he smiled at Ma Sith Great and asked, I wonder if Fourth Elder has come all the way from the west to come here. Do you have any advice for me? Ma Sith Great's face was as dark as still water. He laughed coldly and said, The death of the fourth young master of the Sacred Lake tribe is very suspicious. The old man has come under the orders of the tribe leader to ask Lu Daoyu to follow the old man back to the west to clear himself of suspicion. Lu Ping smiled and said, Since Fourth Elder has come under the orders of the tribe leader, how can I not see the tribe leader's flag? Every major force in the world of practitioners like the Tenma people had their own set of rules to govern the world. This was also the embodiment of the status of these major forces in the world of practitioners. The token that the Tenma people used to travel around the world was the celestial horse flag, which was a fine horse flapping its wings and flying on the flag. Since Ma Sith Great wanted to capture Lu Ping and bring him back to the west, he naturally had to show his reasoning in the world of practitioners. Otherwise, if he lost his moral foundation, he would break the rules of the cultivation world. This might be a big trouble for the Tenma people. Moreover, Lu Tianping's reputation in the North Sea could be considered as the sun in the sky among the third-generation cultivators. If the Tenma people did not want to cause any trouble, they had to either capture or kill someone like Lu Ping in one fell swoop without leaving any evidence or future troubles, or they had to have solid evidence to uphold their moral principles. Otherwise, they would not easily make a move to avoid unnecessary trouble. It was true that the weak were prey to the strong in the world of practitioners. However, if the strength of the two parties was on par, they also had to pay attention to right and wrong. The formation of this rule could be considered as a merit that the five Holy Lands had strongly advocated in the Middle Mainland for tens of thousands of years. Ma Sith Great secretly clenched his teeth. Previously, when Lu Ping revealed their whereabouts with a shout, his previous plan could not be carried out. Chapter 1180. During this period of time, Lu Ping had stirred up quite a storm in Central Plains. First, he had taken advantage of a giant tortoise to float on the Qingming River, which had already attracted the attention of some people in the Central Plains training world. Then, he had caused quite a stir by sealing the Qingming River in fog. Finally, his battle with Chu Yuntian had shocked many Central Plains practitioners. The fourth elder of the Tenma people, who was in Shihuang, had naturally received the news as well. Originally, according to the fourth elder's wishes, he had wanted nothing more than to summon his troops and charge into Central Plains to kill the junior who had humiliated him many years ago. Unfortunately, at this time, the leader of the Tenma people was planning something big. All the Tenma people were doing their best for this matter, and the fourth elder did not want to cause trouble at this critical juncture. However, this matter could not be carried out with great fanfare. If the fourth elder decided to carry it out in private, there would be no one to restrain him at this moment. Thus, the fourth elder summoned his two direct descendants and quietly entered the cultivation world of the Central Plains. Originally, the fourth elder was not even willing to call his two descendants. This way, it would be difficult to keep this matter a secret in the future. Moreover, the fourth elder was confident that with his current strength, it would not be difficult for him to deal with a practitioner who had just entered the mid-Dharma stage. However, as a precaution, especially after hearing that Lu Ping had withstood a few blows from the great practitioner, Chu Yuntian, and seemed to have passed some kind of test set by this great practitioner, the fourth elder was much more cautious and decided to bring two of his descendants who were at the mid-Dharma stage as his assistants. With a great Dharma adept and two mid-Dharma adepts working together, there should not be any more accidents, right? Let's work together and finish this quickly. Ma the Great made up his mind and shouted at the two Tenma people. The life weapon in his hand, which had been refined from his own horn, was already thrusting towards Lu Ping's chest. After Ma the Great had entered the late Dharma stage, this life weapon, which had been refined from Ma the Great's horn, had finally passed its first trial. This allowed Ma the Great's power to increase by 30% when he used various spells. Just as the heavenly horned horse spur was about to hit Lu Ping's chest, Elder Ma Si had already landed on the river. He gently stepped on the surface of the river and landed on the ground. At the same time, the two mid-Dharma stage heavenly horse cultivators behind Lu Ping also used their mystic treasures and spells to support Elder Ma Si's pincer attack. At the same time, two whirlwinds appeared under their feet and they landed on the river water. In Lu Ping's senses, the moment the three of them landed on the surface of the river, it was as if the entire Qingming River had been shaken. Then, he saw the waves surge and the entire river began to shake violently. Life Great Spell, Galloping 10,000 Horses. Although this was only a life great spell of the Tenma people, there was something special about this great spell. It could be used as a formation to unleash the full power of the Galloping 10,000 Horses. All the adepts with the blood of the Tenma people could unleash the power of the Galloping 10,000 Horses, together with the formation. Furthermore, the more adepts there were of the Tenma people, the more compatible this great spell would be, and the more powerful it would be. There were even rumors that the power of this great spell was limitless. Even the most powerful great spell could only be destroyed when it encountered the Galloping 10,000 Horses of the Dharma stage when it was unleashed by dozens of Tenma people. When a great adept and two adepts of the same level as Lu Ping used the Galloping 10,000 Horses, together, the power of the great spell multiplied. Even Lu Ping, who had always been calm and collected, could not help but gasp when he saw the Galloping 10,000 Horses, Dao soldier formation of the Tenma people, which could be said to be the foundation of the clan. It was rumored that the entire clan of the Tenma people could be included in the Galloping 10,000 Horses, Dao soldier formation. If this was true, even those who had achieved the divine spirit level would have to retreat in front of this Dao soldier formation. If this was on land, Lu Ping could only resist or escape. However, these three Tenma people were currently using the Galloping 10,000 Horses, Dao soldier formation on the surface of the Qingming River. With the help of the mighty river water, the power of the Galloping 10,000 Horses, Dao soldier was originally not inferior to the power on land. However, they had forgotten that Lu Ping had cultivated water elemental spells. In the path of water, Lu Ping's ability could increase by 3 levels for no reason. On land, Lu Ping could not fight against the Galloping 10,000 Horses, Dao soldier. However, on the water, Lu Ping could take drastic measures. The moment the three Tenma people stepped on the river water, they suddenly felt the river water under their feet disappear. Lu Ping had already tried to empty the river water under their feet to weaken the power of the galloping 10,000 horses. Dao soldier. Of course, this was just a trick. The galloping 10,000 horses. Dao soldier would not be broken so easily unless Lu Ping could drain the Qingming River dry in one breath. Behind Lu Ping, huge waves rolled back and went against the flow. In front of him, the waves surged and rolled down. It was a pincer attack. He could not let the power of the three powers merge into one. Otherwise, once the Dao soldier formation was formed, not only would it completely trap Lu Ping, the power of the Dao soldier formation would also increase. At this moment, Lu Ping pushed the thin water-flowing sword's hilt with one hand, and the huge waves behind him surged into the sky. He had cast the great river-flowing east sword art. The two swords danced in the air, and with the help of the Qingming River's momentum and Lu Ping's understanding of the great river-flowing east sword art, he unleashed the full power of the great river-flowing east sword art. He actually managed to suppress the two heavenly Pegasus cultivators behind him. However, the two Tenma people behind him were only cooperating. The real threatening power was Ma the Great's galloping flood wave. After Lu Ping threw out the dual flying swords behind him, most of his attention was on Ma the Great. As Lu Ping suddenly raised his hands, the water of the Qingming River under his feet suddenly rose by 10 feet. Then, Lu Ping straightened his hands and pushed them upstream. The huge waves of the Qingming River rose against the flow, and rose higher and higher. It was as if the Milky Way was flowing in reverse, crashing towards Ma the Great's attack. Innate great power, art of blue waves. However, under the pincer attack, no matter how powerful Lu Ping's power was, it was still beyond his capabilities. Although the two Tenma people's power was suppressed by Lu Ping, Ma the Great still managed to suppress Lu Ping's art of blue waves. The two Tenma people behind him could retreat, but they still guarded Lu Ping's path of retreat. However, Lu Ping couldn't retreat at this moment. He could only take on Ma the Great's attack head-on. Amidst the loud bang, the two huge waves collided with each other. The water splashed in all directions like crystal pearls, creating many deep holes on the embankments on both sides of the river. The water of the Qingming River, which was flowing towards both sides of the river due to the collision of the huge waves, managed to hide from the embankments and swept towards both sides of the river, drowning the flat fields within a radius of a few miles in one fell swoop. A pale color flashed across Lu Ping's face, but soon it returned to normal. On the other hand, Ma the Great's expression didn't look good either. Although Lu Ping suffered a loss from the pincer attack of the three Tenma people, he still managed to successfully stop the Dao soldier formation of the three Tenma people. Clang! The nether water sword that was lurking around Lu Ping tried its best to block the horn that was flying towards him. However, at this moment, Lu Ping was in a state where he had used up all his strength but had yet to recover. Although the nether water sword had managed to block the horn, under the tremendous force, Lu Ping's body was directly knocked into the river, creating a huge ditch that was 10 feet deep and hundreds of feet long on the surface of the river. Taking advantage of the fact that the ditch was filled up by the water, Lu Ping's entire body was already in a sorry state. Don't hold back anymore, lest the night is fraught with trouble. Although the four of them had only exchanged blows for a moment, the commotion caused by it was definitely not small. The cultivation world of the Central Plains was filled with cultivators and there were countless sections. There was no telling when someone would intervene. This was definitely the territory of the human race, so even though the Tenma people were powerful, they might not be welcomed by others. However, just as Ma the Great finished speaking, he saw the corners of Lu Ping's mouth twitch slightly. Ma the Great was slightly startled, and then he heard a loud shout. Ayaya, how shameless, 3 against 1. What our Yuan clan hates the most is bullying the few with numbers. Fellow Taoist who uses a sword, our old Yuan clan just so happens to be itching to fight today, so I'll help you block the two behind you. You're pretty lucky. Remember to owe our old Yuan clan a favor. Ma the Great's expression changed drastically, as if he could already tell who the person was from the voice. He opened his mouth and shouted at the two juniors. Be careful. Then, as if he wanted to say something, he saw that Lu Ping's two flying swords had already swept up an earth-shattering sword cry, completely suppressing Ma the Great's voice. After that, the entire Qingning River started to boil. Ma the Great suddenly felt as if he had fallen into a pot of boiling water, and every bubble that emerged from the river could explode into a bunch of sword sparks, as if he was going to be sliced into 1,000 pieces and made into a pot of horse meat soup. Ma the Great was greatly shocked, and could no longer care about the two juniors. He pulled out a horsetail whisk from the space behind him, and swept it in all directions, repelling all the sword sparks that were spreading towards him. When he raised his eyes, his expression instantly became even more unsightly. Just as Lu Ping made his move, an 8-feet-tall giant holding a 10-feet-long wrought copper rod jumped out from nowhere, and swung it down. However, 2 rod shadows flashed in midair, and they fell on the heads of 2 Tenma people, blocking the 2 who were about to attack behind Lu Ping to support Ma the Great. Lu Ping laughed loudly and said, "Thank you for your help, Brother Yuan. How should I address you, Brother Yuan? When this matter is over, I'll treat you to a drink." The giant was unstoppable, and his wrought copper rod transformed into hundreds of rod shadows in midair, firmly encircling the 2 Tenma people cultivators who were at the same level as him. Hearing Lu Ping's words, the giant laughed, and said, "Lu Tianping of the North Sea, I, Old Yuan, know you. I, Old Yuan, will never change my name or my surname. I am Yuan Long of the great spiritual ape clan. I heard that you're quite capable, and I originally came here to find you for a fight. However, I didn't expect to see you being besieged. You owe me today, so you should treat me to a drink. However, I, Old Yuan, have always been fond of wine. If you can't take out some fine wine, I, Old Yuan, won't be satisfied." The Great Spiritual Ape Clan was indeed the Great Spiritual Ape Clan. Chapter 1181. Looking at the few great adepts who had fought with Lu Ping, Nanyu Laozu had been killed by Lu Ping using the identity of Wen Yuan, while the death of Hanya Laozu was only known to the Longhuai ancestor alone. After that, when he had fought with Chu Yuntian, both parties had merely stopped at the appropriate point. Although Lu Ping had secretly gained the upper hand, even Chu Yuntian himself probably did not know that Lu Ping had held back when he had used the boiling sky sword technique. In other words, up until now, Lu Ping's ability to fight a late Dharma adept had not been known to anyone. But now, the opportunity had come. This battle with Ma Si Great was the perfect opportunity for Lu Ping to show off his abilities to the practitioners of Central Plains. Because of the sudden intervention of the spiritual ape Yuan Long, Lu Ping had taken the initiative to use the boiling sky sword technique that he had just mastered, gaining the upper hand in one fell swoop and trapping Ma Si Great within the sword realm that was formed by this supreme sword technique. However, without the assistance of the spiritual treasure and the natal gentian formation, Lu Ping's abilities would undoubtedly be reduced by a third. But Lu Ping was not afraid at all. His pair of flying swords controlled the sword realm tightly, and did his best to trap Ma Si Great within it. However, Ma Si Great was, after all, a late Dharma adept. Born as a Tenma people, he had a strong level of practice. How could he be easily trapped by Lu Ping's techniques? Just as the horsetail whisk had swept open a space within the sword realm, the Pegasus horn had already pierced towards the space within the sword realm. But at this moment, the river water beneath Ma Si Great's feet bubbled and a bunch of bubbles rose from the water surface before bursting together. Countless sword auras shot out and instantly cut the space that the horsetail whisk had swept open into pieces. Ma Si Great was shocked. He stomped down with both his feet, forming 2 huge Pegasus legs that were formed from spiritual chi, and stomped down. Amidst the crackling sounds, the countless sword auras were all crushed by the spiritual chi legs. The spiritual chi legs were also cut by the sword auras and finally shattered into pieces in the air. Ma Si the Great let out a muffled groan and the shoes on his feet suddenly shattered into pieces that fell from midair. Another few bubbles appeared. This time, Elder Tian Ma did not dare to use his spiritual chi legs to block the sword auras. Instead, a pair of spiritual chi wings suddenly appeared on his back. Elder Tian Ma's body was abnormally light as he flew in all directions within the sword realm, dodging the fierce sword auras that were coming at him. Stepping on swallows was one of the special techniques of the Tenma people. For a moment, Lu Ping's sword techniques could not keep up with Elder Tian Ma's flying speed. However, the boiling sky sword technique was not something that could be dodged so easily. Just as Elder Tian Ma secretly let out a sigh of relief and was prepared to use all his strength to break Lu Ping's sword techniques, he suddenly felt his entire body start to heat up and his head start to feel dizzy. Could it be because of the sword realm? But for someone like Elder Tian Ma, not to mention a pot of boiling water, even if he was in the depths of a volcano, he might not be able to harm a single hair on his body. How could he be so hot that he fainted? No, it wasn't because of the sword realm, it was because of his spiritual sense. Elder Tian Ma's spiritual sense had been accumulated for nearly 1,000 years and had long become one with his mind. Perhaps the strength of his spiritual sense was not as strong as Lu Ping's, but the familiarity with it was something that Lu Ping's 200 years of experience could not compare to. Thus, when Elder Tian Ma felt that his spiritual sense was being attacked without a sound, even so, Elder Tian Ma did not know how to react to this strange attack. At this moment, Elder Tian Ma's spiritual sense seemed to have seen a ray of light. Was it the light of a fire? Even Ma the Great could not see it clearly for a moment. Then, a wave of intense pain caused Elder Tian Ma to cry out in pain to lessen the pain that came from his soul. Then, a huge bubble appeared in the middle of the Qingming River. It took this opportunity to swallow Ma the Great whole into the bubble. Numerous sword chis burst out. Elder Ma Si, who was affected by the divine sense attack, could only weave the horsetail whisk into a net in a hurry, firmly protecting himself in it. At the same time, Ma the Great shrunk his spiritual sense as much as possible and even hid it under the protection of his Dharma idol. This way, he was finally able to break free from the restriction of Lu Ping's spiritual sense attack. Amidst the sound of chi-chi, the fine strands of the horsetail whisk were cut off by the sword chi. Elder Ma Si did not dare to be negligent anymore. He stretched out his hand to recall the single-horned spiritual treasure. Then, he abruptly stabbed upwards and broke the bubble. However, the horsetail whisk had become a bald tail. This magic treasure could be said to be completely useless. At this moment, the fourth elder could not care about this magic treasure that was refined from a part of his body. Although he had broken free from the attack of Lu Ping's supreme divine sword technique, he was still trapped in the sword domain. However, the fourth elder had sensed something when he used his natal spiritual treasure to attack randomly in the air. He immediately leapt up and swung his horn upwards. A huge Pegasus had appeared behind the fourth elder, and the horn just happened to land on the head of the Pegasus. The heavenly horse leapt up and let out a long neigh towards the sky. Then, it suddenly charged upwards, and the single horn on its head grew larger and larger. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth and the sword domain all gathered towards the single horn, and then formed a huge single horn in midair. Amidst the loud bang, Lu Ping felt the thin water unstoppable sword tremble violently. It was almost out of Lu Ping's control. Then, Lu Ping flew back and saw the sword domain formed by the dual flying swords in front of him suddenly break. Ma the Great followed behind a huge Pegasus idol and broke out of the encirclement. Once again, it was the Pegasus clan's heirloom's great skill, the sky-piercing. But after Elder Ma Si summoned his Pegasus avatar, and combined it with the single-horned spiritual treasure, the power of the skill was like a tiger that had grown wings. It actually broke through Lu Ping's peerless sword skill. However, just as Ma the Great broke out of the encirclement, there was suddenly a slight airflow in the air. Immediately, the fourth elder, who had just released his divine will from his body, changed his expression. This was because Lu Ping's supreme divine sword technique was a kind of secret magical power that coexisted with swordsmanship and divine will. Under the attack of Lu Ping's powerful divine will, even the fourth elder, who was at the late Dharma stage, had no choice but to retract his divine will. It was only under the protection of the Pegasus idol that he was able to escape the tracking of his divine will. It was precisely because of this that before he broke through Lu Ping's sword domain, Mao the Great did not dare to release his divine will. And in the moment that he broke out of the encirclement, he did not notice that Lu Ping had already hidden the water-seer formless sword. By the time the fourth elder released his divine will and sensed the strange fluctuations in the air around him, it was already too late. The water-seer's sword was already 3 feet in front of him, heading straight for his face. In his desperation, the fourth elder only had time to summon his protective magical power. At the same time, black hair suddenly grew from the back of his neck and stretched forward to entangle the water-seer's sword. However, although the shapeless sword technique was mainly used for sneak attacks, it was still a powerful magical sword technique after all. How could it not be used to fight head-on? The moment the water-seer's sword appeared, 5 sword shadows flashed out in a row. The long black hair that was entangling the water-seer's sword was instantly twisted into a mess. Then, the water-seer's sword pierced through 9 layers of protective gang chi and broke through the fourth elder's protective magical power. It was a pity that the water-seer's sword was already at the end of its flight after breaking through the fourth elder's Pegasus idol and his protective magical power. It only managed to blind Mao the Great's left eye before it could advance any further. The Pegasus single horn smashed down and knocked the water-seer's sword away. With only one eye left, Mao the Great glared fiercely at Lu Ping but did not dare to fight him again. Instead, he suddenly turned and flew towards the west. At the same time, the Pegasus single horn suddenly shot out. With a series of clangs, the spiritual ape's rod net that was blocking the 2 mid-Dharma adepts of the Tenma people was suddenly broken. 2 figures flew out from the gap and followed closely behind Mao the Great as they flew towards the west. "Hey, our old Yuan hasn't had his fun yet, why are you running away?" Suddenly having his magical power broken by Mao the Great, and letting his 2 opponents escape, the spiritual ape Yuan Long was greatly disappointed. He could not help but shout, "Coward, if you have the guts, then let's see who's the winner before you leave!" Immediately after, the spiritual ape suddenly changed his target and said to Lu Ping, "I say, why did you let that old horse go? You didn't even give old Yuan a chance to fight." Lu Ping did not know whether to laugh or cry. He spread his hands and said, "After all, he is a grand adept. If he has made up his mind to leave, how can I stop him?" A grand adept had been defeated in a fair and square battle with Lu Ping. Even one of his eyes was blinded. This was a legendary moment in the entire world of cultivation. Now, this spiritual ape was actually complaining that Lu Ping had interrupted his fun. However, Lu Ping immediately understood this fellow's purpose. The spiritual ape rolled his eyes and a silly smile flashed across his rough face. He said, "Hee, our old Yuan helped you by stopping those 2 horses. Now that you've interrupted our fun, it's time for you to return the favor. Come, let's have a fight first." After saying that, Yuan Long stretched out his hand and summoned his 1,000-pound rod. He got into a stance and was about to attack. Lu Ping quickly waved his hand and said, Wait. We were first surrounded by 3 Tenma people, and then we had a huge battle with a grand adept elder of the Tenma people. How much strength do we have left now? Don't tell me that your old Yuan family takes advantage of others when they are down?" Yuan Long was instantly enraged. He patted his chest and said, "Nonsense! Just because of what you said, our old Yuan family will have a fight with you. However, our old Yuan family has always been fair. I'll give you a few days to recuperate. When you've recovered, we'll have a good fight again." Lu Ping knew that the spiritual ape family had always been stubborn. This battle would most likely be unavoidable. Thus, he could only say helplessly, "Fine. It's just that the battle here has definitely attracted the attention of many people. We can't stay here for long. Yuan Long chuckled strangely and said, It just so happens that our old Yuan family is also tired. Let's rest on your black tortoise for a while. Chapter 1182. If the fact that Lu Ping had the green sea snake by his side and that his battle with Chu Yuntian had caused the training community of Central Plains to acknowledge Lu Ping's strength and reputation, then his battle with the fourth elder of the Tenma people, where he not only defeated him but also blinded one of his eyes, had caused a huge uproar in the training community. Previously, other than the heirs of the Holy Lands who had fought with Lu Ping, the rest of the people still had doubts about the true strength of this North Sea practitioner. After all, when Lu Ping had fought with these heirs of the Holy Lands, most of the time, he had stopped at the right moment, or even ended in a draw. As for these heirs who had fought with Lu Ping before, no matter how arrogant they were, their evaluation of Lu Ping's true strength was that he was not inferior to a certain family. Although this statement was vague, it was definitely not wrong. Many people could naturally sense that Lu Ping had more or less held back when he fought with them, but there was no reason for them to help Lu Ping. Moreover, these practitioners had their own thoughts. If one day there was a practitioner whose strength was similar to theirs who became enemies with this Lu Tianping, wouldn't it be a happy thing if they were to suffer a huge loss at the hands of this fellow because they had misjudged his strength? It was precisely because of this that it was difficult for the training community of Central Plains to determine the true strength of Lu Ping. After a long time, they naturally thought that Lu Ping was deliberately hiding his strength, and that his true strength might not be that high. Now that Qing Mingjiang and the fourth elder of the Tenma people had a fair and square victory, those who had previously doubted Lu Ping's strength were instantly silenced. It was not that there were no examples of a mid-Dharma adept challenging a late Dharma adept, and there were even many who could fight with a late Dharma adept and retreat unscathed. However, there had been no one who could win a battle since Xiao Baiyu, the sky-splitting sword saint from 300 to 400 years ago. Furthermore, the fourth elder of the Heavenly Pegasus clan was not someone ordinary people could compare to. He was a genuine great divine ability cultivator, a top expert in the cultivation world. Meanwhile, Lu Ping was still traveling upstream along the Azure Netherworld River. On the broad back of the black tortoise, Yuan Long wrinkled his nose and glanced at the black tortoise beneath his feet. Then, he said to Lu Ping, "You have part of the tyrannical tortoise's bloodline. I heard that you have 3 little green sea snakes following you. If I didn't know that you're Lu Tianping of the Northern Sea, I'm afraid that ordinary people would think that you're a cultivator from the spirit-taming sect." After Lu Dagui had merged with part of the tyrannical tortoise's bloodline, although his own potential had increased significantly, he still could not perfectly hide the aura of the tyrannical tortoise's bloodline within his body. Therefore, it was very easy for others to notice that he was hiding something. Lu Ping smiled and did not say anything. With a flip of his hand, Linglong's wine cauldron appeared in Lu Ping's hand. Then, it floated in mid-air and suddenly expanded. Linglong climbed out of the wine cauldron. Lu Ping first glanced at Yuan Long, then said to Lu Ping in a bad mood, "Why did you call Linglong out? Don't you know that Linglong is preparing for her second thunder trial? This is not a time to disturb her." Yuan Long's eyes widened the moment Linglong's wine cauldron appeared. When he saw Linglong emerge from the wine cauldron, his eyes shone brightly and his face darkened. Lu Ping did not pay much attention to Yuan Long's expression. Instead, he said to Linglong, "I know that you have improved very quickly. However, without me to help you summon the Thunder Trial, how will you become a second tribulation spirit treasure? If you want to pass the Thunder Trial, you will have a lot of time to prepare. When you are completely prepared, we can summon the Thunder Trial. However, we have guests now. First, take out a few of your treasured spirit wines. I will use them to entertain the guests." Linglong had been by Lu Ping's side all these years. It could be said that she had collected and brewed quite a lot of spirit wines. Normally, only Lu Ping would drink them to his heart's content. In addition, only his followers, such as De Bayo, could benefit from it. Naturally, the rest of his friends would only give him a limited amount of spirit wine. Therefore, Linlong had collected quite a lot. Is this the imitation spirit treasure of the treasured cauldron of heaven and earth? A surprised voice came from the spiritual ape beside Lu Ping. He could not help but ask. Lu Ping was stunned. Only then did he notice that Yuan Long's expression was a little strange. He could not help but nod and say, "Indeed, I once found Linlong in the Yingtian dojo. Since then, Linlong has been by my side." Back then, the North Sea cultivators had gathered in the Yingtian mountain range and secretly entered the Yingtian dojo. They had unearthed the inheritance of the Yingtian faction. More than 100 years had passed since then. Although the secret back then was not known by everyone in the cultivation world of the Central Plains, there was no longer a need to hide it. Therefore, Lu Ping had to admit that he was very carefree. Moreover, in the cultivation world of the North Sea, there had been many rumors about Jinling's rise over the years. Among them, there was a widely spread view among the major sections. That was, when all the sects had gathered in the Yingtian dojo, the biggest secret had been obtained by Jinling alone. It was precisely because of this that Jinling soared to the sky, leaving the various sects in the North Sea far behind. Even Lu Ping's rise was believed by many to be due to him obtaining the inheritance of the Yingtian faction. Jinling naturally did not explain anything about this. When everyone had entered the Yingtian dojo together, even if Jinling had obtained all the benefits, it was still due to Jinling's own ability and luck. How could the other sects not have obtained the Linlong wine cauldron and the mountain-splitting axe? How could they not have obtained the abundant void mirror, the medium-sized spirit stone vein, and the Dharma-formed soul? The Yingtian faction. Back then, it was said that the Yingtian faction had indeed created a replica of the treasured cauldron of heaven and earth. I didn't expect it to be this wine cauldron. Not bad, not bad, not bad at all. Yuan Long said it was not bad, but there was a hint of regret in his eyes. Lu Ping had seen it clearly from the side, but Yuan Long did not deliberately point it out. Lu Ping was not in a position to ask directly, so he only gestured for Linlong to take out a few fine wines from her collection. No matter what, if Yuan Long had not stepped in to fend off the two mid-Dharma adepts of the Tenma people at the last moment, it would have been difficult for Lu Ping and Ma Sith Great to even escape unscathed from this battle, let alone emerge victorious. As such, Lu Ping was more than willing to pay for this wine. Oh, the 100-flower dew! The brewing of this wine requires top-grade spirit flowers to be brewed using a secret technique. If the secret technique is used but the spirit flowers are not old enough, the quality of the wine will be greatly reduced. Yuan Long's eyes lit up when he saw the first jar of wine that Lu Ping took out. However, it was obvious that he did not believe that Lu Ping would be able to gather 100 types of spirit flower dew of sufficient age. This 100-flower dew did not mean that he could just randomly find 100 types of spirit flowers. There were only a few hundred types of spirit flowers that could be used to brew this 100-flower dew, and each type of spirit flower was considered rare among spirit herbs. It was not easy to gather all of them. Of course, if one did not care about the age of the spirit flowers, it would be much easier. When Lu Ping heard Yuan Long's question, he did not refute it. He only opened the seal on the jar of wine, and the rich aroma of the spirit flower wine made Yuan Long salivate. However, this was just the beginning. In a short while, Lu Ping took out another 10 jars of spirit wine from the wine cauldron. Some were big, some were small, some were big, some were small. Every jar of spirit wine made Yuan Long's eyes light up. However, just 5 days later, Yuan Long, as usual, poured a small jar of spirit wine into the mouth of a core forging adept. It was enough to shorten their training time by 2 months. He shouted, "Good wine, really good wine! In these 3 days I, old Yuan, have drunk all the good wine that I have not tasted in the past 300 to 400 years. When I return to the northern ice plains, Let's see who dares to compete with me in drinking more spirit wine. Lu Ping looked at Yuan Long's excited expression, and the corner of his eye twitched. He had long heard that the wise great apes were the best at drinking, but he did not expect that in just 3 days, Yuan Long would have drunk almost 20 types of spirit wine that he had specially prepared. One had to know that this spirit brew was not ordinary. Apart from the rich spirit she contained within it, which required the practitioner to spend a lot of time to refine, the alcohol was also extremely potent. Even if a normal Dharma adept drank too much of it, he or she would inevitably experience dizziness and confusion. However, this giant ape in front of him was obviously not affected by this. In fact, in the short span of 5 days, he had drunk more than 20 types of spirit wine. Yet Lu Ping did not feel any spiritual qi leaking out of Yuan Long's body. However, the spirit wine contained so much spiritual qi that even Lu Ping himself could not completely refine it in a short span of 5 days. This meant that the giant ape in front of him must have a secret technique that allowed him to temporarily store spiritual qi as a backup. It was a good thing that Lu Ping had been careful. Among the 20 types of spirit wine, Lu Ping had only taken a small portion of each. If not for this, from Lu Ping's point of view, Yuan Long was obviously drinking as much as he could. Furthermore, Yuan Long was not a glutton. Every time he finished drinking a type of spirit wine, he would give an evaluation of the spirit wine. This evaluation was very appropriate for Lu Ping, who had participated in the brewing of the spirit wine. Furthermore, Yuan Long had another skill, and that was that every time he drank a type of spirit wine, he would be able to clearly describe the spirit herbs used to brew the spirit wine, and even the age of the spirit herbs. This made Lu Ping very impressed. Yuan Long drank to his heart's content, and he smashed the jar of spirit wine in his hand onto the black tortoise's back. After that, he pointed at Lu Ping and roared with laughter. "Ha ha, Lu Tianping of the North Sea, 5 days is enough for you to recuperate and build up your strength. Today, we'll decide the victor between us." Lu Ping was astounded, and he smiled. "Brother Yuan, you've drunk so much spirit wine. It wouldn't be too late for us to compete after you've refined the spirit energy in the wine." Yuan Long's expression turned solemn as he said, "Brother Lu, it's enough to show that you have an outstanding disposition. However, Brother Lu doesn't understand our great ape clan well enough." Lu Ping said curiously, "Oh, I'd like to hear the details." Yuan Long grinned and said, "If an ordinary person were to drink so much fine wine in such a short period of time, they'd need at least 10 days to properly cultivate. However, our great ape clan's battle prowess increases the more fine wine we drink. Not only does that fine wine not weaken our strength in the slightest, it actually increases it greatly. So, Brother Lu, feel free to make your move." Lu Ping didn't know about this, and he smiled. Just as he was about to say something, Yuan Long unexpectedly smashed his club towards his head. He said with a smile, "Brother Lu, you'd better be careful. Our great ape clan doesn't care about who moves first. Once we start fighting, I'm sure we'll try to seize the initiative." The club's power was so great that even Lu Ping didn't dare to take it head-on. However, Lu Ping didn't dodge. Under Yuan Long's astonished gaze, the Lu Ping before him was suddenly smashed into pieces, and then turned into a puddle of water that flowed down the black tortoise's shell. The art of crossing the sea and heaven was being executed right in front of the great ape clan's eyes, and this Yuan Long actually didn't notice it in the slightest. However, Lu Ping had already appeared in the air 300 feet away. His pair of flying swords drew a streak of light in the air, and directly aimed for Yuan Long's neck. He smiled and said, "It's impolite not to reciprocate. Brother Yuan, take this sword of mine." Chapter 1183. The great intelligent apes were famous for 2 hobbies in the cultivation world. The first was that they valued wine as much as their life. In the cultivation world, no matter what kind of fine wine there was, they would rarely fail to recognize it. There had even been incidents in the cultivation world where sects and clans were exterminated because of a fine wine that the great intelligent apes had never tasted or heard of before. Their ultimate goal was simply to obtain that fine wine, or to see that fine wine that they had never seen before. The second was that they were madly addicted to battle. The great intelligent apes respected but never feared the strong. Moreover, they loved to challenge the strong in the cultivation world. They never killed the innocent, but they would use all kinds of workable or unworkable reasons to start a fight or join a fight. Therefore, the number of the great intelligent apes might be slightly inferior to that of the green sea snake race and the five elements peacock race, but they never lacked in the number of strong cultivators. They even had a little more than the other top demon clans. However, if one believed that the great intelligent apes were crude and unintelligent, then all those who held this kind of thinking would definitely suffer a great loss at the hands of the great intelligent apes. The reason why the great intelligent apes were called wise was because of their intelligence. Do not be fooled by the appearance of the great intelligent apes. Even if they took human form, they were usually strong giants, just like Yuan Long, who is currently fighting against Lu Ping. They look simple and honest, but if that was really the case, the great intelligent apes would have been destroyed countless times by the cultivation world that was full of deception. How could they become one of the top forces in the cultivation world, one of the few large demon clans that could rival the 6 holy lands of the human race? Just like now, the great intelligent apes had given Lu Ping 5 days to recuperate, but he had also taken the opportunity to drink all the spiritual wine that Lu Ping had collected. Although the spiritual wine could not be converted into an increase in Yuan Long's cultivation in a short period of time, he could use a secret technique to store pure spiritual qi that could be refined into vital essence at any time. In the long run, the pure spiritual qi was naturally the most suitable to be used to improve one's cultivation. However, in the short run, the pure spiritual qi could be used to quickly replenish the consumption of vital essence, and could also be used to prolong a cultivator's fighting time. Yuan Long knew very well that although he was looking forward to fighting against Lu Ping, after witnessing Lu Ping blinding one of the eyes of the great cultivator Tenma people, he clearly realized the gap between them. If they were to really fight, Yuan Long would most likely lose. However, the more this was so, the more the blood of the great ape flowing in his veins boiled, and the more he longed for this battle. The spiritual qi contained in the fine spiritual wine was the biggest bargaining chip to prolong his fight against Lu Ping of the time. Even if he wasn't a match for Lu Tianping, he still had to fight. The longer he persisted in the hands of an expert, the more he would be able to obtain. So, since Lu Tianping wanted to treat him to a drink, then he would think of a way to drink to his heart's content before the battle. Yuan Long succeeded, but in the end, he still failed. The two of them battled above the Qingming River for 6 hours. During the last 2 hours, Yuan Long even realized that Lu Ping had gone easy on Lu Ping so that Yuan Long could enjoy the battle to his heart's content. On the other hand, Yuan Long was so engrossed in the battle that he didn't notice Lu Ping's presence at all. 6 hours later, Yuan Long's limbs were tied up by Lu Ping's Qingming River water. Taking advantage of the moment when Yuan Long broke free, the invisible water sword touched Yuan Long's forehead, and the long sword disappeared again. Awesome! Awesome! The great ape Wise did not have the slightest regret after losing. Instead, he shouted in joy. For the great ape Wise who loved to fight, a hearty battle was more important than winning or losing. This was also the reason why the great ape Wise's great master, Pure Yang Laozi Yuan Pokong, liked to fight in groups. With the methods of this Yuan Pokong Laozu, it was very difficult to find an opponent in a one-on-one fight in the world of cultivation. Only in a group fight could he find some satisfaction. The two of them landed on the back of the black tortoise. The great ape Wise scratched the back of his head, and a 1-foot-tall stone jar appeared in his hand. Yuan Long patted the stone jar with his fan-sized palm and said, "I, old Yuan, have drunk so much wine from you, Brother Lu, and I feel very sorry. Fortunately, I still have a jar of the great ape Wise's top treasure, monkey wine. I want to treat you to a drink." When Lu Ping heard it was monkey wine, his eyes immediately lit up. he asked curiously. Is it really monkey wine? It's an incredible treasure in the world of cultivation. Yuan Long smiled complacently and said, Isn't that so? Although our brilliant ape clan has monkey wine, the production is extremely limited. With our old yuan status, it's already not easy to get a small jug every 10 years. Lu Ping looked at the 1-foot-tall stone jar in Yuan Long's hand and hesitated. 10 years for a small jar. How many years did it take for Yuan Long to save up such a big jar? Should I take it easy later? I don't want to drink all of his treasure. However, this monkey wine is a rare treasure in the world of cultivation that can strengthen the muscles and bones. It has an obvious effect on a cultivator's physical body. It would be a pity if I missed this golden opportunity. But, immediately after, Lu Ping felt that his previous hesitation had been thrown out the window. Yuan Long continued, But this jar is different. It was stolen from our former general before we left the North Ice Fields. In the past, we might not have been willing to invite Brother Lu to drink with us. But this time, we can drink to our heart's content. Haha, good. In that case, I have no choice but to accept. It just so happens that I'm also drooling over the world's famous monkey wine. The former general of the Great Ape Wise, wasn't that the pure Yang Laozi Yuan Pokong who loved to fight in groups? No wonder Yuan Long was able to find such a big jar of monkey wine. Since that was the case, Lu Ping naturally wouldn't stand on ceremony. That monkey wine was really a rare treasure. As soon as the cup of monkey wine entered his mouth, the sweet aroma of the wine contained a strong fiery nature. It was as if a mouthful of lava had flowed down his throat and suddenly burst into flames, burning his limbs and bones. Lu Ping could even clearly feel the heat of the flames on his body. Good wine, this is really good wine. This feeling of comfort made Lu Ping exclaim in delight. He couldn't help but drink another cup of monkey wine. At this time, Yuan Long, who was watching from the side, felt as if his heart was being cut by a knife when he saw Lu Ping drinking cup after cup. However, the Great Ape Wise had always been forthright, especially when they met a good friend with a similar temperament. Therefore, although the Great Ape Wise felt his heart ache for the monkey wine, he was also happy to see Lu Ping drinking to his heart's content. However, other than the Great Ape Wise, no one else would be able to understand this contradictory mentality. Every time Lu Ping drank a cup of monkey wine, the time between each cup was very long. This was so that he would have enough time to refine the medicinal spiritual qi in the wine. Fortunately, the two of them weren't drinking for the sake of drinking. From time to time, they would discuss the Tao and interact with each other. During this period of time, apart from the previous battle, the two of them could be considered to have benefited greatly. They drank this jar of monkey wine for 2 whole days, but they still only drank 2/3 of it. In the end, when Lu Ping saw that Yuan Long's face had turned green, he was secretly amused. However, even if Lu Ping drank the rest of the monkey wine, it wouldn't be of any help to the strengthening of his body in the short term. Only then did he say, "Ah, what a pity, what a pity! This monkey wine can be said to be the best wine in the world. It's a pity that I can't drink anymore." Naturally, Yuan Long refused. Although his heart ached for the wine, he valued this good friend in front of him more. Naturally, he tried his best to dissuade Lu Ping from drinking all the wine. However, Lu Ping used the excuse that he couldn't drink any more and refused to drink any more. Helplessly, Yuan Long put the jar of monkey wine behind him. At this time, Lu Ping said, "Brother Yuan, I see that although your 1,000-pound staff is quite powerful, it seems to lack some variation. May I know why?" Great intelligent apes like to use staffs as their magic weapons. This was because of Ape Taoist's divine iron staff. However, the great intelligent ape clan staffs were known to have many variations, such as length and size. However, the 1,000-pound staff in Yuan Long's hand was definitely powerful enough, but it lacked many variations. This piqued Lu Ping's curiosity. When Yuan Long heard Lu Ping mention his life treasure, he couldn't help but sigh. He said, "Because I was young and frivolous, I wholeheartedly wanted to survive the thunder tribulation and become a life treasure. In the end, I still lack some foundation. Although I successfully survived the thunder tribulation in the end, the life treasure source was slightly lacking. It was powerful enough, but it had to sacrifice various variations. Lu Ping said curiously. The source of a life treasure can't be compared to a person's source. The lack of source doesn't mean that it's damaged. It can be made up by smelting rare treasures. Although Lu Ping wasn't very proficient in the Tao of smithing, at his level, he still had a lot of experience. Yuan Long smiled wryly and said, How can it be so easy to obtain rare treasures? This time I, old Yuan, have followed the cultivators of my clan to travel the Central Plains, and one of our objectives is to find a rare treasure that can supplement the essence of this staff. Otherwise, not only will this spirit treasure lack many transformations, it will also be extremely difficult for it to improve further in the future. Lu Ping nodded. He pondered for a moment, and didn't say anything else. Just as Yuan Long was about to bid farewell, Lu Ping suddenly said happily, I've got it! Brother Yuan, why don't you take a look and see if this thing can help your 1,000-pound staff? Yuan Long was startled. When his gaze fell on the item in Lu Ping's hand, his eyes immediately emitted 2 rays of blue light. The light flashed and Yuan Long immediately shouted, It's actually this thing! Qianji quicksand iron! Is this thing really Qianji quicksand iron? Lu Ping was slightly startled when he saw the 2 rays of blue light in Yuan Long's eyes. This blue light was also the Tri-Pure True Pupils. However, the inheritance of the Tri-Pure True Pupils was divided into 3 branches, namely the Tai Qing True Pupils, Jade Pure True Pupils, and Prime Clear Pupils. Each of the 3 branches had their own merits, and were evenly matched. Yuan Long's blue light was obviously cultivated in the Prime Clear Pupils branch, while Lu Ping's was cultivated in the Jade Pure Pupils branch. The only difference was that Lu Ping had already cultivated this branch to great success, while Yuan Long clearly hadn't found the 9 types of suitable heaven and earth water. Chapter 1184. The True Pupils of the 3 Pure Ones was originally a magical technique passed down by ape Taoists. Even Jinling was able to obtain the inheritance of the True Pupils of the Jade Pure by chance. As the direct descendant of ape Taoist, it was not surprising that the great ape clan possessed all the inheritance of the True Pupils of the 3 Pure Ones. However, when Yuan Long confirmed that the bowl in Lu Ping's hand that looked like fine sand but was actually flowing in the jade bowl at all times was really the 1,000 opportunity quicksand iron, Yuan Long's heart suddenly felt like it was being scratched by the claws of a mouse. He could not calm down for even a moment, and circled around the bowl of treasure in Lu Ping's hand. At this time, Yuan Long revealed the nature of the great ape clan. Lu Ping smiled and said, It is indeed the 1,000 opportunity quicksand iron. I also obtained this item by chance, but it is not very useful to me. Since Brother Yuan needs it, I will give it to you. This bowl of 1,000 opportunity quicksand iron was a treasure Lu Ping obtained from Nanyu Laozu. Although it was a metal spiritual material, it flowed everywhere like water. It was a rare treasure in the cultivation world and was the favorite item of the great ape clan to forge their own natal spiritual treasure. Usually, the great ape clan's natal spiritual treasure only needed a little bit of 1,000 opportunity quicksand iron to enhance their own treasures. If the bowl of 1,000 opportunity quicksand iron that Lu Ping gave to Yuan Long was used sparingly in the past, it was enough to forge 3 to 5 spiritual treasure level treasures. Now, it was completely given to Yuan Long. Yuan Long was startled and hurriedly waved his hand and said, No, this is a rare treasure in the world. It is something that can only be found by chance. I can't accept it. Lu Ping's face turned serious and said, Brother Yuan, you and I hit it off at first sight. There is no reason to refuse a gift from a friend. Moreover, you have already treated me to the world's unparalleled monkey wine. Giving you this bowl of 1,000 opportunity quicksand iron is a courtesy to reciprocate. If you refuse, does it mean that you do not recognize me as a friend? Yuan Long was stunned and said, That is not the case. This 1,000 opportunity quicksand iron is. Hey, be careful! Before Yuan Long could finish his words, he saw the 1,000 opportunity quicksand iron in Lu Ping's palm flying towards him. Yuan Long hurriedly and carefully caught the jade bowl, fearing that the quicksand iron inside would spill out. Lu Ping said, Brother Yuan, there is no need to say more. This 1,000 opportunity quicksand iron is yours. Otherwise, we can't even be friends. Yuan Long vigorously scratched his head and looked at the bowl of 1,000 opportunity quicksand iron in his hand. He wanted to refuse, but he really couldn't bear to part with it. So, as if he had made up his mind, he took out the jar of monkey wine from behind his head and said, Brother Lu, to tell you the truth, I really want this 1,000 opportunity quicksand iron, but I can't take this treasure of yours for free. Please don't look down on this jar of monkey wine. In the future, it will be good to leave it as a reward for the disciples of the clan. Lu Ping laughed and said, All right, I will accept this. This monkey wine is also a rare treasure in the world. It may not be inferior to the 1,000 opportunity quicksand iron. Yuan Long understood in his heart that although the monkey wine could be considered a rare treasure of the world, as long as the intelligent Great Ape clan existed, the monkey wine could be produced in an endless supply even though it was little. As for the 1,000 chance quicksand iron, it was something that could only be chanced upon and not sought. Why was the former General Yuan Pokong able to become the head of the 4 great generals of the Great Ape clan? It was all because of the Qianji quicksand iron that Yuan Pokong had snatched from Xiao Baiyu that year, which was forged into the spiritual treasure phantom cudgel. When Yuan Pokong fought with the other 3 generals of the spiritual Great Ape clan, he was actually able to fight against 3 of them and escape unscathed. Of course, it was said that Yuan Pokong also paid a great price for this. He was chased by Xiao Baiyu and beaten miserably. In the end, he fled back to the North Ice Field in a sorry state. From then on, the two could be said to have formed a grudge. Yuan Long pondered for a moment, and then said to Lu Ping in a serious manner, Brother Lu, when I was drinking with you earlier, I seem to have heard that your treasured cauldron of heaven and earth replica is preparing to undergo the second thunder tribulation. Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat, and he retracted his smile. That's right. Ling Long has been accumulating quite a bit of strength over the years. I think she has a high chance of surviving the second lightning tribulation. What's wrong, Brother Yuan? Did you notice anything wrong? The treasured cauldron of heaven and earth in Taoist Ape's hands could regulate the world's spirit veins. It was one of the 6 great divine weapons of heaven and earth. As the direct descendants of Taoist Ape, it was normal for the Great Ape clan to have some understanding of the treasured cauldron of heaven and earth. Sure enough, Yuan Long nodded and said, Brother Lu, your treasured cauldron of Ling Long has indeed accumulated a lot of resources. It shouldn't be too much of a problem for it to survive the second thunder tribulation. However, if Ling Long survives the thunder tribulation, the effect of her basic control over the formation of spirit veins will at most double that of the first thunder tribulation. The treasured cauldron of heaven and earth can regulate the world's spirit veins. Even if this replica is inferior to the original, it is still far inferior. Lu Ping thought that there was indeed something fishy about it. He hurriedly said, Brother Yuan, please teach me. Yuan Long shook his head and said, I'm not teaching you. I'm just reminding you. One of the important reasons why the treasured cauldron of heaven and earth can regulate and gather the world's spirit veins is that there seems to be a suppressive object in the treasured cauldron of heaven and earth. This artifact can maximize the effect of the treasured cauldron of heaven and earth in gathering the world's spirit veins. If the treasured cauldron of heaven and earth wants to completely condense the spirit veins into one and hide them in the earth's vein without collapsing, it needs this treasure in the treasured cauldron to finally suppress and condense it. Otherwise, with the current power of Ling Long's wine cauldron, it can easily control and condense small or micro spirit veins. However, if it wants to condense a medium spirit vein, even if Linglong survives the second thunder tribulation, it may not be able to do it. Lu Ping was puzzled. Brother Yuan, Linglong once helped me control large spirit veins. If she survives the second thunder tribulation, she should be able to control a large spirit vein on her own, right? In fact, Linglong did not only control a large spirit vein. On Failing Mountain, Linglong even helped Lu Ping control 7 large spirit veins in one go to help him break through to the Dharma realm. Yuan Long smiled and was about to explain, but unexpectedly, at this time, Linglong jumped out from behind Lu Ping and said, "He is right. Controlling and condensing spirit veins are not the same thing." Lu Ping naturally knew that Linglong really agreed with what Yuan Long said. However, he was still a little puzzled, so he could only look at Yuan Long with a questioning gaze. However, at this time, Linglong continued to say, "Right now, I can control large spirit veins and can condense small and micro spirit veins. These are all not bad, and after the thunder tribulation, I can even condense medium spirit veins. However, medium spirit veins will only condense when Linglong's real body is around. Once the real body leaves, the spirit veins will lose their suppression and will automatically collapse. However, the spirit veins that the treasured cauldron of heaven and earth condensed in the world will not collapse. They will condense as one with the earth veins. This is the biggest difference between a replica and a heaven-breaking artifact." Lu Ping finally understood a little and said, "In other words, after Linglong survives the second thunder tribulation, even if she can condense a medium spirit vein from the earth veins, this spirit vein will only exist under Linglong's suppression. Once Linglong's real body leaves, this spirit vein will automatically collapse and return to the earth veins." Yuan Long nodded and said, "Exactly." In fact, in the world of cultivation, there are many spirit veins that the treasured cauldron of heaven and earth's imitation spirit treasures have gathered. These spirit veins are collectively known as the void spirit veins. Because the gathered spirit veins have never been able to condense and form, in order to be able to release the imitation spirit treasures from the void spirit veins, there are alchemists in the world of cultivation who have created a type of spirit-gathering Dharma treasure to suppress the void spirit veins and release the imitation spirit treasures of the treasured cauldron of heaven and earth. A spirit-gathering Dharma treasure! Lu Ping had seen such a Dharma treasure before. Years ago, on the Silver Sword Island in the East Sea of Skyrend, there had been a private trade fair. At that time, Lu Ping, who was still an early-stage core-forging cultivator, had followed Liang Xianfeng and Laozu, who were in the late-stage core-forging realm. This spirit-gathering Dharma treasure was a spirit-gathering Dharma treasure, but there were only 2 spirit-gathering Dharma treasures condensed on it. Although a spirit-gathering Dharma treasure was just a Dharma treasure, it was not easy to refine. It could be said that it was second only to a heavenly abode Dharma treasure of the same rank. However, such a Dharma treasure was only refined to imprison a medium spirit vein. Moreover, after the spirit vein was sealed and suppressed, a cultivator had to constantly look after it, otherwise it could still cause the spirit vein to flow away. However, even such a spirit-gathering Dharma treasure caused Liang Xianfeng to secretly follow the person who bid for it. He wanted to kill the person and take the treasure for himself. From this, one could see the importance of a spirit-gathering Dharma treasure to a sect. Lu Ping finally understood the problem, so he asked, "Brother Yuan, do you know what treasure is used to suppress the spirit vein in the wine cauldron of heaven and earth?" Yuan Long shook his head helplessly. "I'm not too sure about this. However, according to ancient legends, the treasure used to suppress the spirit vein in the wine cauldron of heaven and earth should be a tower." "A tower?" Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat, but his expression was still one of surprise. Yuan Long nodded. "That's right, it's a pagoda. However, I don't know what this pagoda looks like or how it was refined. Perhaps the old geezers of the wise Great Ape clan might know a bit more, but I'm afraid that it involves the secrets of our Great Ape clan. I'm afraid that even if Brother Lu wants these secrets, those old geezers won't tell you." Lu Ping revealed a slightly regretful expression and said, "I naturally understand this principle. If it was me, then I would absolutely not tell anyone who wants to exchange for the secret of the wine cauldron, no matter how high the price is. Yuan Long nodded and said, "It's good that Brother Lu is aware of it." Perhaps the secret of Linglong's advancement might not be known only by our clan. Whether Brother Lu can obtain information about the tower in the future will depend on Brother Lu's luck. Not long after, Yuan Long bid farewell to Lu Ping and headed southwest. According to Yuan Long, he was originally going to the southwest. It was said that after the battle of the 9 pure Yang great ancestors at Qingming River, the peacock royalty of the Endless Mountain and the Lingyun Valley weren't peaceful anymore. He was going there to find someone to fight, but he encountered the disturbance caused by Lu Ping on the Qingming River, so he postponed his trip to the southwest and specially came to fight with Lu Ping. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.